Chapter 323. The man picked up the axe, paused for a moment, and then looked at Han Fei. "It's not bad, but it's too expensive." Han Fei responded, "I'm sure it's better than others." However, the man shook his head. "I don't know who you are. Can you sell it for 40,000 yuan or not?" Lin Miao Miao said to Han Fei via voice transmission, "It's common to bargain in the black market. You can choose not to sell it or bargain with him. But generally, you can't bargain much." Han Fei nodded slightly and looked at the man opposite. "I'll charge you 5,000 yuan less. Otherwise, I won't sell it. What I have here are all ultra-quality magic weapons, not a single high-quality one. Besides, these are all made by a refiner. What I got are all first-hand goods." The person on the other side thought for a moment, his eyes slightly glanced behind him, and saw a few people walking over. Then he took a deep look at Han Fei. "I'll take it." The man put down the mid-quality pearls and left, and Han Fei was overjoyed. Isn't it too easy to make money? In the blink of an eye, he had earned 45,000 mid-quality pearls. And one of the people who had just come over was obviously a woman. At this moment, she picked up a long whip casually. This long whip had serrated teeth and was extremely sharp. The woman wiped it with her hand and scarlet blood dripped out. Han Fei was about to say, "If you don't pay, don't bleed." But the next moment, there were two big boxes in front of him. Han Fei scanned them with his spiritual energy and found there were 50,000 mid-quality pearls. This woman was really straightforward. She actually bought it right away. After a moment, Lin Miao Miao was surprised. She hadn't seen many people selling ultra-quality magic weapons before. As for high-quality and mid-quality magic weapons, not many people bought them. She thought this business was not good, but who knew it was so good? After only half an hour, Han Fei had already sold 10 ultra-quality magic weapons. Seeing Lin Miao Miao's eyes widened, Han Fei said, "Don't be surprised. You don't know the gap between high-quality and ultra-quality magic weapons. If you don't have a spiritual weapon in your hand, an ultra-quality magic weapon that can exert its full strength is sometimes even not weaker than a low-quality spiritual weapon." Lin Miao Miao blinked. She really didn't know this. She was just an advanced great fishing master, and she only had one high-quality magic weapon. Therefore, it was understandable that Lin Miao Miao didn't know much about weapons. After a while, Han Fei sold 7 or 8 ultra-quality magic weapons in his stall. At this moment, Han Fei had already made a lot of money. He thought to himself, "This is so fucking profitable. If he continued to sell them in this way, half a month later, he would be able to earn tens of millions a day." Who would have thought that the total profit of operating in Blue Sea Town for more than a year would be less than that of SAN? How many days he could earn so much in the level 3 fishery? Just when Han Fei was feeling complacent, his eyes suddenly dimmed. When he raised his head, he found 3 black-robed men standing in front of the stall. Han Fei said telepathically, "If you want to buy it, hurry up. If you're fast, you'll get it." However, the 3 of them remained unmoved. One of them glanced at Lin Miao Miao and then said to the 2 of them via voice transmission, "You broke the rules. Don't you know that no more than 10 high-level things can be sold in the black market at a time?" Lin Miao Miao is stunned. When did this rule come into being? The man glanced at them coldly. Ultra-quality magic weapons, each priced at nearly 50,000 mid-quality pearls, and 10 of them are sold for 500,000. In this way, it will quickly suck away the money in the hands of the buyers. How will the other stalls do business then? Lin Miao Miao said in a voice transmission, "But I've seen people selling spiritual weapons and combat skills here before, and there are more than 10 of them." The black-robed man snorted lightly. That was in the past. This is now. Han Fei's eyes slightly changed. "I've sold it now. What are you going to do?" The man said, "Tell me, who refined this batch of ultra-quality magic treasures? Where was he?" "I told you, you can continue selling them here today." "I don't care." Han Fei narrowed his eyes. So these people are deliberately looking for trouble? Seeing that his business was booming, he must be jealous. Han Fei looked around but didn't see anyone coming to uphold justice. He immediately realized that the manager of this black market was probably interested in the source of his top-quality magic treasures. Han Fei was silent for a while and suddenly said, "Let's close the stall. We won't sell them." However, the next moment, the three people in front of him stepped on the ultra-quality magic treasures under their feet. "It's okay if you don't want to sell them. Leave these magic treasures here." Han Fei looked at Lin Miao Miao and said to them via voice transmission, "Can you kill people in the black market?" The three black-robed men sneered. "You violated the rules of the black market first. Leave the things here, or I'll kill you." Han Fei smiled and looked at the three people in front of him. "What if I say no? You're courting death." Han Fei felt a powerful force suddenly hitting his mind. He immediately realized that this was a soul attack. Han Fei was fine. After all, he had the soul resistance pearl and the god-scaring painting. His spiritual power was far stronger than that of ordinary people. But Lin Miao Miao was just an advanced great fishing master. Sure enough, Han Fei turned his head, only to find that Lin Miao Miao was bleeding from her 7 orifices. Blood was gurgling in her mouth and she was falling backward. "You're courting death." At this time, Han Fei didn't care about the bullshit rule. Although Lin Miao Miao was a little greedy, she had helped him a lot in the past 2 days. Moreover, she was a very conscientious person. If it weren't for his request, Lin Miao Miao wouldn't have brought him to this black market. But now, an advanced great fishing master was attacked by a dangling fisher with a spiritual talent. Han Fei really hoped that he wouldn't be beaten into a fool by this blow. Han Fei frowned. This was very possible. Lu Renquang was knocked out by the soul-attracting jellyfish and was also bleeding from his 7 orifices. But Lu Renquang was much stronger than Lin Miao Miao. He could withstand a spiritual shock, but it didn't mean that Lin Miao Miao could. In an instant, Han Fei was furious and a long knife appeared in his hand. The three black-robed men on the opposite side couldn't help but be surprised to see that Han Fei was fine. In the next second, the three of them had just summoned their weapons, but Han Fei had already pulled out his knife. In an instant, spiritual energy surged like a dragon, and within a radius of 100 meters, there were terrifying spiritual energy fluctuations. Before the black-robed man in the booth next to Han Fei had time to run, he was sent flying by the momentum of this knife. "Stop!" While Han Fei pulled out his knife, he heard someone scolding in the distance. The sound waves rolled over, scaring many people who set up stalls to pack up immediately. However, it was already too late. How could he take back his knife? A terrifying knife light flashed across the sky, and the three people in front of Han Fei retreated frantically, looking horrified. "Attach!" Before they could finish their words, the knife light had already swept past, and 2 of them were directly killed. The remaining leader reacted the fastest and had already put a low-quality spiritual weapon in front of him. However, what was the use of this? With a crack, the spiritual weapon broke, and a line of blood flowed down from his forehead. This person was directly split in half. "Thief, how dare you make trouble in the black market? Go to hell." After killing 3 people, Han Fei picked up Lin Miao Miao. At the same time, he waved his hand, put away the ultra-quality magic weapons on the ground, and rushed out of the black market like a cheetah. Swish! After running for less than a kilometer, Han Fei felt an arrow bursting at him from behind. Its power was so strong that it even gave him a sense of fatal danger. Han Fei was a little scared. This person was not an intermediate dangling fisher, nor an advanced dangling fisher, but at least a peak-level dangling fisher. Han Fei held Lin Miao Miao's body, made a strange movement, and brushed past the arrow with his back. "Huh!" Han Fei ran wildly again, but 3 more arrows followed him in a row. Han Fei was shocked. This black market was actually controlled by a peak-level dangling fisher. Dodge! Dodge! Bam! The arrows were too fast. Although Han Fei had tried his best, he was still hit by the last arrow. Puff! His spiritual energy protective cover was instantly shattered. Han Fei staggered and fell forward, but then he was attached to the nine-tailed mantis shrimp and his claws moved forward as if he were walking on waves. At the same time, Han Fei's speed increased a little and he directly rushed out of the door. Han Fei's face was pale. A peak-level dangling fissure was too strong. That arrow actually penetrated 3 inches into his body. At this moment, the spiritual energy of the other party was still destroying his body. Fuck, next time I come back, I'll kill you. Han Fei quickly shuttled through the 3rd floor. Along the way, many people were still dumbfounded, only feeling a gust of wind blowing in front of their eyes. But Han Fei didn't expect that he had already left the black market, but that person still dared to chase him out. Yes, Han Fei once again felt an extremely powerful arrow. Han Fei glanced at the unconscious Lin Miao Miao, glanced around, and then with a determined look, he went straight to a dark corner. Rumble, a house on the 3rd floor was smashed by an arrow. After a few seconds, a black-robed man walked openly in the cabin on the 3rd floor. This man was holding a longbow, looking at the ruins he had shot through in front of him, feeling that something was wrong. He punched out, shaking the ruins, only to find that there was no one in the ruins. Ha! Where is he? Chapter 324. The black-robed man stopped in front of the ruins for a moment. And within a kilometer around him, there was no one else. Where was Han Fei? Soon, the guards rushed down from above. However, when the guards arrived at the ruins, there was only a pool of ruins left. In Forge the Universe, Han Fei's heart and liver hurt. He vomited blood and felt distressed. He knew it was hard for living creatures to come in, but he didn't expect it to be so hard. Forcibly dragging Lin Miao Miao into Forge the Universe consumed 1 million points of spiritual energy, which almost scared him out of his wits. At this moment, Han Fei clutched his stomach with one hand, looking at the unconscious Lin Miao Miao with a wry smile. Just now, the black-robed man's last blow almost killed Han Fei. The strength of a peak-level dangling fissure was strong and it seemed that he used a spiritual weapon with a sealed spirit. Under this violent blow, Han Fei's indestructible body failed to block it and his lower abdomen was pierced by an arrow. At this moment, Han Fei kept casting the divine healing technique on himself and occasionally threw one to Lin Miao Miao. Han Fei was very hesitant. It didn't matter that he spent his spiritual energy. Although only one weapon was sold, it was sold for more than 40,000 mid-quality pearls. On average, each weapon was sold for 45,000 mid-quality pearls. If he used all this money to buy spiritual fruits, he would have to buy hundreds of spiritual fruits. Even the spiritual fruit store he went to last time was not enough for him to buy all the spiritual fruits. But then Han Fei smiled bitterly again. After leaving Forge the Universe, he was still in the same place. It could be said that he still didn't know what kind of situation he would encounter after he went out. If the black-robed man was still here, he would have to use all his firepower and then directly escape from the dragon boat to save his life. Of course, it was impossible to go out now. He had to recover from his injuries and return to his peak state before he went out. Thinking about this, Han Fei found a piece of fish skin and covered Lin Miao Miao's eyes. Then, he took out a soul resistance pearl and stuffed it into Lin Miao Miao's mouth. At the same time, Han Fei muttered, "Don't blame me for this. I didn't expect him to suddenly attack me. But you have to believe that if you really become a fool, I will come back to avenge you one day. At that time, I will wipe out this black market and avenge you." Outside. On the top deck of the ship, a middle-aged man was fishing with a fishing rod. He couldn't see the fishing line on the rod, so he didn't know where the hook had landed. Behind the middle-aged man, a black-robed man half knelt on the ground. "My lord, that thief must still be hiding on the dragon boat. I've already arranged for someone to investigate." It was said that many people had seen them. In less than half a day, this subordinate will definitely find out. The middle-aged man hummed softly and said calmly, killing someone on a dragon boat is an extremely bad thing, and it will leave a bad impression on the crew. If you can't handle this well, then hand over the black market to someone else. The black-robed man shivered and bowed even lower. He said in a trembling voice, "Yes, my lord." "All right, go ahead. Don't disturb my fishing." After leaving the deck, the black-robed man had just gathered his subordinates when someone hurriedly ran over. "Sir, I've found it." "Oh. Where is it?" That person hurriedly said, "We didn't find them, but we did investigate the two of them very clearly. The killer's first in the level 3 fishery, his name is Han Fei." The black-robed man was taken aback. "Huh, Han Fei. This name seems a bit familiar." "Go on." His subordinate said, "Because this is the first time Han Fei boarded a dragon boat, he knows nothing about it, so he hired a guide named Lin Miao Miao. This Lin Miao Miao is just an advanced great fishing master and usually lives in the free area on the 3rd floor. In the past 2 days, she has taken Han Fei to many places. They have opened treasure digging fish, bought spiritual fruits, and bought floating stones. Oh, they also bought a lot of refining materials yesterday." The black-robed man's voice suddenly turned cold. "They bought refining materials?" The subordinate shivered with fright and lowered his head. "Yes. After buying the materials, Han Fei stayed in the room for a whole day and didn't come out until this morning." The black-robed man's pupils shrank. "After buying materials yesterday, he went to sell ultra-quality magic weapons today. That kid is actually a refiner." This news was too important. A refiner was a special profession. What that brat sold were all supreme-grade magic treasures. Then, could this brat refine spirit weapons? If he could refine ultra-quality magic weapons, what about spiritual weapons? Could he seal spirits? If he could seal spirits, it would be even more terrifying. A refiner who had mastered the ability to seal spirits was a superior existence even on a dragon boat. But why did such a person go to the black market to sell things? With his ability and identity as a weapon refiner, he only needed to casually call out, and not to mention dozens of supreme-grade magic treasures, even hundreds or thousands of them would be sold out. The black-robed man's eyes narrowed slightly. "Search for him. Don't make a sound. Tell me when you find him. If anyone dares to do it, kill him." Yes, half a day later. Han Fei's injuries had healed, but his strength still needed a few more points to return to his peak. After all, his lower abdomen was pierced and his internal organs were injured. If it weren't for the fact that his divine healing technique was better than the healing technique, it would take him at least 2 days to recover. Cough, suddenly, Lin Miao Miao moved and made a sound. It seemed that she had just recovered from a mental breakdown. Han Fei asked, "Are you awake? How's your head?" "Ah. It hurts." "Don't move. My soul is damaged and my spiritual power is exhausted. Of course I feel uncomfortable. Meditate for a while." Lin Miao Miao was dizzy and her consciousness was still a little fuzzy. After a few hours, she slowly recovered. "Ah. What's wrong with my eyes? I can't see." Seeing that Lin Miao Miao was about to take off the fish skin on her eyes, Han Fei quickly grabbed her and said, "Don't move. Your soul is damaged now. During this period of time, don't let your eyes see the light. Otherwise, you might really go blind." Lin Miao Miao was so scared that she almost cried. "Ah." Lin Miao Miao was so scared that she almost cried, "Ah. Will I go blind? Am I blind?" Han Fei comforted her. "You won't go blind. As long as you listen to me, you can take off the blindfold in 1 day at most. As long as you listen to me, you'll be able to take off your blindfold in a day at most. However, you mustn't take it off now." "Okay, I won't take it off, I won't take it off, I won't take it off." Lin Miao Miao's face turned pale with fright, but she didn't know that Han Fei was secretly relieved. Han Fei thought to himself, "If you see my forge the universe, I don't even know whether I will kill you or not." Suddenly, Lin Miao Miao said in surprise, the spiritual energy here is so abundant. Where are we? Han Fei continued to bluff, we are now in a room on the 4th floor of the dragon boat. It's okay. The spiritual energy in this room is abundant. Lin Miao Miao was surprised. 4th floor. Ha! Where are the 3 people just now? They seem to have attacked us. Han Fei blinked and thought to himself, how should I explain it? Should I say that I killed the 3 people with a knife? Should I say that we are being chased by a peak-level dangling fisher? Even Lin Miao Miao wouldn't believe it. Han Fei could only lie to her. I gave them some money and they let us out. But don't go to the black market again. And, after all, you were injured because of me, so I will give you 10% of the profit I promised you before. But you can't go to the black market again. Lin Miao Miao was silent for a moment. Forget it. After all, you saved me. Han Fei shook his head slightly and said bluntly, I don't have the habit of owing others favors. Just take it. With that, Han Fei put a few big boxes in front of Lin Miao Miao. Take them. If possible, don't stay on this dragon boat any longer. As a great fishing master, you haven't even explored the level 2 fishery yet. You can only be at the bottom of the level 3 fishery. Lin Miao Miao suddenly realized something and quickly asked, something went wrong, right? If nothing happened, why did you come to the 4th floor of the dragon boat? Han Fei thought for a while. Don't worry about it. Remember to go to the teleportation array immediately after you go out and go back to the town. I gave you a lot of money, enough for you to use before you become a dangling fisher. The next day. After staying in Forge the Universe for a full day, Han Fei took Lin Miao Miao out. As soon as he appeared, Han Fei found that the ruins were gone and this place became a dark room again. Han Fei let out a long sigh of relief. This was why he chose this place before. This place was the darkest and most people wouldn't want to sleep here. Lin Miao Miao asked, what happened just now? What a wonderful feeling. Han Fei shrugged. Don't think too much. This is the dragon boat's barrier. Can I take off the blindfold? Han Fei looked around and nodded slightly. Go ahead. Remember. Go to the teleportation array and leave later. Otherwise, I'm afraid your life will be in danger. Lin Miao Miao took off the blindfold and then said in a daze, this is not the 4th floor, this is the 3rd floor. Han Fei nodded. It's the 3rd floor. I lied to you before. Lin Miao Miao was speechless. How can this guy lie to me? But then she realized something was wrong. Just now, her body seemed to have crossed something. Moreover, that feeling of abundant spiritual qi instantly disappeared. What's going on? Han Fei knew that he was full of loopholes, but he didn't care as long as Lin Miao Miao didn't know that he had been there. Han Fei said, don't ask. The 3 people in the black market were killed by me. Now, I'm afraid there are peak-level dangling fishers looking for us. So, you must leave. Lin Miao Miao's heart skipped a beat and she gritted her teeth. I'm going to buy some spiritual energy first. I'll go to refine some resources first. Han Fei thought for a while. It seemed to make sense. Where else could he buy such cheap spiritual fruits and weapons when he returned to the town? So he nodded and said, I'll go with you. Chapter 325. Han Fei didn't know how naive he was. He thought that the reason why the black market was called a black market was that it couldn't be exposed to the public. Therefore, the people in the black market would not be willing to be exposed to the public. Now that he had escaped, it would be very difficult for the black-robed man to find him on such a big dragon boat. But when the two just appeared on the 1st floor, Han Fei's face suddenly changed and he pulled Lin Miao Miao. Let's go. Let's go. Ah. What's wrong? Han Fei said to her via voice transmission, we are being watched. Where is the teleportation array? Let's go. Lin Miao Miao's face turned pale. It's in the middle of the first floor. Han Fei thought for a while. The middle is not far from here. He immediately took Lin Miao Miao's hand and walked along the railing to the middle of the dragon boat. At this moment, there was a circle of people fishing around the railing, and Han Fei was also very close to the railing. After all, the focus of the people here was fishing. Who would care about two passers-by? Han Fei said to her via voice transmission, "Don't panic. Relax. You are my guide. Don't look back." How could Lin Miao Miao not panic? However, she didn't dare to answer Han Fei's warning. She could only point here and there occasionally, as if she was explaining something. After the two walked for only 10 kilometers, Han Fei perceived that a guard was staring at him. That guard even nodded at the other guard. Fuck! Before Han Fei finished complaining, he saw a middle-aged man coming towards him. The man looked at Han Fei with a genial face, slowly walked up to him, and made a gesture of invitation. Han Fei remembered the threat of this person. At this moment, his heart tightened again. Damn it, I've been discovered so quickly. How did I find out? Lin Miao Miao still wanted to walk forward, but she was pulled by Han Fei. She looked back and found that Han Fei was standing still. At this moment, Han Fei was staring at a middle-aged man opposite him. Lin Miao Miao's face changed slightly and she seemed to realize something. When the middle-aged man walked up to Han Fei, a smile appeared on the corner of his mouth. How about? Let's talk. Han Fei sneered. Talk? Let's talk here. The middle-aged man shrugged and said, all right, let's talk here. The middle-aged man looked at Han Fei with a smile and said telepathically, I really don't understand. How did you escape from my arrow without using a flash stone? However, you've escaped. That's your ability. I'll give you a chance now. Help me refine a spirit artifact, and I'll spare your lives. Han Fei grabbed Lin Miao Miao's hand and exerted a little force. Has my identity as a refiner been exposed? For the other party to be so confident, he must have found something. However, what Han Fei was worried about was not whether his identity would be exposed, but why would the guards listen to this person's orders? Han Fei thought, not good. There were so many people trading in the ghost market, but the dragon boat really didn't notice? No, the person in charge of the dragon boat may have known the existence of the ghost market for a long time. So, why did they let it go? Benefits. Han Fei thought of this word. The ghost city does some shameful transactions. Although he hasn't had the time to stroll around the ghost city, he can guess that most of the things sold there are not very glorious. In other words, it was a rare commodity that could easily be sold at a lower price. But what about the ghost market? There was basically no bargaining in that place. If someone liked something, they would throw money at it and take it away, which was completely different from doing business outside. In this way of operation, on the one hand, they could get good things, and on the other hand, they could make a profit. Han Fei immediately understood that there was a big shot controlling all this. Unfortunately, it was too late for him to figure it out now. His top priority now was to escape. Han Fei looked at the middle-aged man and said via voice transmission, if I don't want to, are you going to kill us in front of so many people? The middle-aged man smiled and said, I forgot to tell you, I am now an inspector of the dragon boat. You killed people on the dragon boat, so I have the right to kill you on the spot. Han Fei took a deep look at the middle-aged man and said, my business has nothing to do with this girl. I'll send her off the dragon boat and then talk to you. The middle-aged man chuckled and then looked at Han Fei sharply. You are not qualified to negotiate with me now. I'll give you 3 seconds to think about it. 1. 2. Han Fei sighed slightly. Just as the middle-aged man shouted, 3, Han Fei suddenly hugged Lin Miao Miao, and then jumped over the railing like lightning, directly jumping off the dragon boat. Many people who were fishing were stunned. What's going on? Where did this idiot come from? How dare he jump off the dragon boat? Humph. Do you think you can run away? The middle-aged man's eyes turned cold and he immediately shouted, "The inspector is enforcing the law. Irrelevant people, leave quickly." Lin Miao Miao was very confused. Just now, Han Fei and the middle-aged man looked at each other for a while, but she suddenly jumped off the boat. However, Han Fei's face was extremely dark at the moment. He felt that an arrow had swooped at him from behind. The powerful force made him feel a sense of crisis again. In mid-air, Han Fei suddenly turned around, and the water-dividing seal in his hand turned into a big seal, smashing at the green light. Bam! At that moment, the big seal phantom was shattered. Han Fei immediately activated a spiritual energy protective cover and turned over to shield Lin Miao Miao under his body. Although most of the arrow energy was blocked by the water-dividing seal, the remaining energy was not something that Lin Miao Miao could resist. Bam! The huge recoil force directly pushed Han Fei and Lin Miao Miao into the water. The moment he entered the water, Han Fei dived directly to the bottom of the sea. However, it was followed by another small green arrow. Han Fei's scalp went numb. If he hadn't been carrying a person at the moment, he might not have been afraid. However, Lin Miao Miao was too weak at the moment. Even if she was touched by this arrow, she might be killed directly. Han Fei couldn't help but miss Xia Shaochan. If she was here right now, she might be able to lure this guy out and try to kill him directly, not to mention escape. Lin Miao Miao was horrified. She asked Han Fei via voice transmission in a panic, "Who is he? Why is he chasing us?" Han Fei's speed was very fast and he activated the shadow swimming art to the extreme. "He is the peak-level dangling fisher who wants to kill me. Sorry, I got you into trouble." Seeing a large number of fishing hooks falling around him, Han Fei was speechless. Those onlookers want to catch me with their poor perception range. Was there something wrong with his brain? Suddenly, a golden and red light flashed on Han Fei's body and a pair of wings suddenly spread out. "Ha! Ha!" There were several exclamations of surprise, and on the top of the dragon boat, someone suddenly got up. A junior dangling fisher with a legendary spiritual beast. "It's him." The middle-aged man narrowed his eyes slightly. "Is this the person the Sun family is looking for?" The middle-aged man suddenly looked back and asked, "How many people from the Sun family are there on our boat?" Behind the middle-aged man, a peak-level dangling fisher bowed his head respectfully. "My lord, there are 3 people." As soon as this subordinate finished speaking, a fishing rod shot out from the air. At the same time, 2 people directly jumped into the water. The subordinate in front of the middle-aged man said, "My lord, the people of the Sun family have taken action. Shall we ask Black Robe to come back?" The middle-aged man shook his head slightly. "No, after all, this guy killed people on the dragon boat, so it's natural for us to chase him. Let Black Robe go. As for the people of the Sun family, well, they are not the same as us. Their motives for catching people are different from ours. Just ignore them. Even if the higher-ups blame us, it has nothing to do with us." After little gold attached to his body, Han Fei's speed soared to the extreme. In an instant, he passed a kilometer. However, to Han Fei's shock, someone actually attacked him with a fishing hook. And in addition to the black-robed man behind him, there were 2 more people. The speed of these 2 people was not slow, not much slower than Black Robe. It seemed that it was very likely that the other 2 peak-level dangling fishers plus the guy with the fishing rod. 4 peak-level dangling fishers besieged him. They really thought too highly of him. Han Fei's figure flickered in the water, making all kinds of weird swimming postures, and his speed was so fast that the people behind him almost vomited blood. Black Robe couldn't help but be surprised when he saw 3 more peak-level dangling fishers. It was natural for him to catch Han Fei. Besides, he didn't intend to kill Han Fei. After all, a refiner was really too valuable. But the other 3 were different. They were quite ruthless and didn't seem to care about Han Fei's life at all. Black Robe asked, "Who are you?" Someone responded, "The Sun family of the 1,000-star city. This guy will be taken by the Sun family." Black Robe frowned and took back the small arrow that he was about to shoot. The Sun family? He knew that a while ago, a large number of masters from the Sun family of the Thousand-Star City came to the level 3 fishery. They seemed to be looking for someone. And this action was very aggressive. The Sun family of the Thousand-Star City directly sent a large number of masters, and almost every dragon boat had their people. Was the Sun family's target that boy? If so, what secret did this boy have that the Sun family sent so many masters to hunt him down? And Han Fei's face was extremely ugly at the moment. What about Lin Miao Miao? It seemed that he had implicated her, but how could he escape with her? Chapter 326. This undersea chase was still going on. Han Fei was like a dragon in the sea, frantically escaping from the water. Lin Miao Miao was stunned. What a terrifying speed! Ahead, there was a school of crescent moon fish swimming over. Lin Miao Miao was shocked. Oh, it's a school of fish. However, Han Fei didn't say a word and rushed over without dodging. Han Fei spread his wings, spun up, and forcibly made a way through the school of fish. Wherever he went, the remains of the crescent moon fish were everywhere. In less than 2 minutes, several holes appeared in the school of fish again, and the 4 peak-level dangling fishers chased after him. The guy who tried to entangle Han Fei with a fish hook gave up when he found Han Fei's movement technique was weird. At this moment, the 4 peak-level dangling fishers were shocked. This boy's speed is too fast. He is only a junior dangling fisher, but his speed is not slower than theirs. Let's exhaust him until he runs out of spiritual energy. These people didn't know Han Fei well, otherwise they would never have come up with this idea. There was no upper limit for Han Fei's spiritual energy. If possible, he hoped to keep this state of chasing. Half an hour later. The 4 people behind Han Fei were all dumbfounded. He has maintained this peak speed for half an hour, but this kid is still running. And he is running further and further away. Does he have a lot of spiritual energy replenishing pills on him? Suddenly, Black Robe said to the 3 of them, "Guys, how about we work together to capture this kid? I only want one thing from him." However, the 3 people of the Sun family sneered. "We also only want one thing from him. May I know what you want? If there is a conflict, I hope you won't make a mistake." Black Robe's pupils shrank slightly. "One thing. Han Fei has a treasure." Black Robe said to them via voice transmission, "What I want is this kid's spirit sealing technique. It's just a technique, not an object. I don't think it will conflict with you." After seeing Han Fei forge dozens of ultra-quality magic weapons in one night, Black Robe felt that Han Fei was not an ordinary refiner and might have a spirit sealing technique. When the 3 people of the Sun family heard that it was not the sea token, they immediately breathed a sigh of relief. They thought to themselves, this person must not be an ordinary person since he dared to kill Han Fei on the ship. If a conflict really broke out because of the sea token, the other party relied on dragon boats, and the Sun family was far away in the Thousand-Star City, so it was hard to say whether they could win. "All right. Let's work together. We don't want the spirit sealing technique." Immediately, someone from the Sun family said, "You block them with your fishing hooks, and I'll chase after them with a secret technique. As long as we stop this brat, taking him down will be as easy as snapping an eye." Black Robe nodded in agreement. It seemed that Han Fei was doomed. 4 peak-level dangling fishers hunted down a junior dangling fisher. If they couldn't even catch him, they would lose face if word got out. A strange green color appeared on the surface of one person's body, and in the next moment, he disappeared on the spot. Black Robe was slightly stunned. It was a high-level water escape technique. The big families of the Thousand-Star City were indeed different. They had many capable people. Ahead of him, Han Fei was relieved to see that he was getting farther and farther away. Only then did he have time to talk to Lin Miao Miao. "Don't ask me why. I don't know either. I'm being chased for no reason. Who am I supposed to ask?" After more than half an hour of chasing, Lin Miao Miao was relieved. Han Fei must be a man of great luck. The peak-level dangling fissures behind him were actually left behind by Han Fei. This speed alone was enough for Han Fei to be ranked among the heavenly talents of the 36 towns. Lin Miao Miao asked, "Are you really a junior dangling fissure?" "What else?" Lin Miao Miao looked at the wings behind Han Fei. "Your contractual spiritual beast is so powerful. Is it an exotic type?" "No, exotic creatures shouldn't be this strong. Could it be a legendary creature?" Han Fei was lost for words. "Miss, we are running for our lives now. Do you still have time to chat?" Lin Miao Miao shouted, "I can't see them anymore. We should be able to survive. If I survive, I'll find the next dragon boat and go home immediately." Han Fei nodded. "Yes, you should go home. You're too weak. There aren't many advanced great fishing masters on the dragon boat. How did you come to San Francisco in the first place? Are you from the level 3 fishery?" Lin Miao Miao's eyes dimmed. "I heard that I could quickly improve my strength in the level 3 fishery, so I came here. But who would have expected that this place would be so dangerous? If I hadn't been rescued, I'm afraid I would have died here long ago." Han Fei nodded. "When we escape, I will help you find the next dragon boat. Where are you from?" Lin Miao Miao smiled. "I'm from the Wind and Rain village in the cloud-soaring town." "What about you, BAM?" Before Lin Miao Miao finished her words, Han Fei's face suddenly changed. 3 fishing rods came at him from 3 directions. At that moment, Han Fei rolled in the sea and waved the blue sea-wandering dragon daggers at them. But the opponent was a peak-level dangling fisher after all, and the quality of his fishing rod was not ordinary. In the blink of an eye, the 2 blue sea-wandering dragon daggers were caught, and Han Fei took this opportunity to break out of the circle of fishing hooks. Shit, Han Fei's eyes widened. 2 daggers. They were hooked away by someone else. However, the opponent didn't seem to care about Han Fei's spiritual weapons and waved his fishing hooks again. The fishing lines of the 3 fishing hooks were complicated, and as a peak-level dangling fisher, his hook control skills were extraordinary. Even though Han Fei was very flexible, he was stopped for a second. The moment he broke out of the encirclement again, Han Fei was shocked. He didn't know when a figure had appeared 100 meters away from him. Damn it, flash. It was a flash stone. Han Fei found it when he was hunting for treasures. As soon as the flash stone shattered, Han Fei had already appeared 10 kilometers away. Ha! Flash stone. Humph, so what if it's an ordinary flash stone? 10 kilometers is not far. I can easily find him. The person from the Sun family who had just caught up with him suddenly vomited blood and disappeared again. Han Fei let out a long breath. That was close. Lin Miao Miao asked, "Is it a flash stone? Did you use it directly?" "Nonsense, if I didn't use it, he would have caught up with me." But Han Fei had just run for half an hour when his face suddenly changed again. The figure appeared again, not only that, but the 3 fishing hooks also came at him again like a net. Fuck. How did he catch up with me so quickly? Han Fei's face changed greatly. He suddenly gritted his teeth and went all out. His eyes became ruthless. Explode. Rumble, the 2 blue sea-wandering dragon daggers exploded. In an instant, the waves in the sea rolled. Han Fei had no time to feel sorry for them. He still had a lot of spiritual weapons. However, he was stopped. Although he was strong, he was not strong enough to escape from 4 peak-level dangling fishers. Puff, Han Fei vomited 2 mouthfuls of blood. Spiritual weapons were nourished by oneself, and when the weapon exploded, the user would suffer a backlash. He had never tried it before because there had never been a situation where he needed to explode a weapon, but today, Han Fei had to explode them. If he couldn't get rid of those fishing hooks, he wouldn't be able to escape. Now, the 3 fishing hooks were directly blown up. These two blue sea wandering dragon daggers were also mid-quality spiritual weapons. If converted into money, even in the level 3 fishery, one sword would cost 500,000 mid-quality pearls. But at this time, Han Fei couldn't care so much. More blue sea wandering dragon daggers appeared beside him again. I'll explode them again. Han Fei, hand over the sea token and I'll spare your life. The man close to Han Fei was also shocked. Han Fei blew up 2 spiritual weapons. And he even blew up 3 fishing rods. But the point is, why are there still a circle of spiritual weapons around him? At this moment, Han Fei was horrified. The sea token. The man mentioned the sea token. Are you from the Sun family? Han Fei was horrified. The level 3 fishery was so big. How did the Sun family find him? Was it because of the chase between him and Black Robe just now that attracted their attention? Han Fei was horrified. His boarding of the dragon boat was random. There were hundreds of dragon boats in the level 3 fishery. How did he meet people from the Sun family? Did the Sun family arrange people on every dragon boat? Han Fei was furious. Fuck off, or I'll blow you up. Go to hell. Han Fei saw the figure rushing at him and throwing a spear in his hand at him with all his strength. The spear body was a single-horned prawn. Explode, rumble, the seawater exploded again. Han Fei vomited another mouthful of blood. I have so many spiritual weapons. I don't believe I can't kill you. However, the next moment, Han Fei was horrified. The spear actually pierced through the self-explosion of the blue sea wandering dragon daggers. Although there was only half of it left, it still blasted at him in an instant. Puff, Han Fei blocked it with the blue sea wandering dragon daggers again. But the blue sea wandering dragon daggers couldn't resist it and were directly knocked away. Kacha, his spiritual energy protective cover was broken. Under the spear, Han Fei was blasted dozens of meters away. Han Fei subconsciously looked at Lin Miao Miao, only to find that the girl was bleeding from her 7 orifices again. This time, it was even more serious. It was a direct frontal attack. Even Han Fei's internal organs were tumbling. How could Lin Miao Miao resist it? Go to hell. Several blue sea wandering dragon daggers darted straight at the man behind him, but the man took out a spiritual weapon long sword and quickly blocked them. And he was getting closer and closer to Han Fei, slashing out a sword from time to time. Swish, because Han Fei was blocked for a moment, the 3 people behind him had gradually approached. The black-robed man directly blasted at him with a spiritual shock. But this was not enough. Along with the spiritual shock, 3 small spiral arrows of blue light shot at him. No, explode again. Han Fei went crazy. He couldn't let them get close to him. Another dagger exploded and Han Fei took the opportunity to fly hundreds of meters away. But the Sun family member closest to him stabbed at him with a long sword and Han Fei felt that his life would be taken away at any time. Draw technique. The long knife reappeared. Han Fei drew it again after 2 days. Clang. Crack, the knife light and the sword chi collided with each other, and the 2 weapons broke at the same time. Han Fei was hit by the sword, leaving a long wound from his chest to his waist and abdomen, and blood flowed out. And the Sun family member didn't have a good time either. He didn't expect that Han Fei would have such a domineering blow. Even a peak-level dangling fisher was not as strong as Han Fei in terms of physique. At this moment, one of his hands was cut off. Han Fei looked down and found that Lin Miao Miao in his arms also had sword marks on her body. However, unlike just now, although she was hit by the spear and hit by the spiritual shock, at least she didn't die. After all, Lin Miao Miao also ate the soul resistance pearl. But this sword was different. The powerful attack directly wiped out Lin Miao Miao's vitality. No. Chapter 327. The moment Lin Miao Miao died, Han Fei was stunned. He was not a saint. If it was someone else who died, he would feel sorry for them at most. After all, life and death were predestined. However, people were emotional animals. In the past few days, although Lin Miao Miao only acted as his guide, she had done her best. Others struggled to survive just because they wanted to make some money. But what about him? Just because he wanted to make some money, he caused her death. For a moment, Han Fei felt extremely guilty. Fuse. Nine-tailed mantis shrimp, attached to me. Fury. Han Fei threw Lin Miao Miao's body into Forge the Universe. Run. Run. I'm going to kill someone. In the blink of an eye, two strange lights burst out of Han Fei's eyes, one black and one white. Before he could even stabilize himself in the sea, the 9-star chain shot out. The sword-wielding man's expression changed drastically. His hand had just been chopped off. His hand had just been cut off, and now Han Fei's momentum had changed sharply and he seemed to be about to break through to an advanced dangling fissure. Clang! Han Fei dodged a small blue arrow and pounced on the one-armed man as fast as a shadow. Han Fei didn't believe that he could take out a third spiritual weapon after losing a spear and a sword. Even if he was from the 1,000-star city, so what? He didn't have the demon purification pot. How could he have so many mid-quality spiritual weapons? The one-armed man was horrified and hurriedly retreated, intending to retreat to the other 3 people. But Han Fei didn't want to retreat. The 9-star chain twisted and finally buckled one of the man's feet. As soon as the 9-star chain was retracted, dozens of blue sea wandering dragon daggers shot out in an instant. Clang, clang, clang. In less than a second, the one-armed man's spiritual energy protective cover was broken, and his remaining right hand was holding an ultra-quality magic weapon. However, before he took any action, with a bang, a blue sea wandering dragon dagger suddenly exploded. In the billowing waves, the one-armed man was stained with blood and his whole body was blown up. At this moment, his eyes widened as if he couldn't believe that he had died in the hands of a junior dangling fisher. Han Fei landed in front of the man. At this moment, the man was still breathing. After all, this was a peak-level dangling fisher, whose vitality was more tenacious than Han Fei imagined. Han Fei stared at the 3 people 1,000 meters away, holding a blue sea wandering dragon dagger in his hand. In front of the 3 of them, he swiped at the man's neck. Brat, you're courting death. Sun Qing, little thief, today, I will make you die without a burial ground. But Han Fei was not afraid. He waved his hand and 30 blue sea wandering dragon daggers appeared in front of him. Even if he self-destructed 5 sabers and broke 1 saber, so what? I have a lot of spirit tools, so many that you will be in despair. The black-robed middle-aged man's face changed. This kid actually killed a peak-level dangling fisher in 2 seconds while being chased by the 4 of them. This child was definitely not an ordinary person. In front of the 3 of them, Han Fei waved one hand and performed the divine healing technique on himself. At the same time, the spiritual energy under his feet formed a circle. However, what appeared this time was not a spirit-gathering formation, but a defense formation. He knew that the defensive formation was useless against the 3 people in front of him. But he didn't plan to defend for long. As long as he blocked 1 blow, it would be enough. Han Fei was not stupid and naturally wouldn't wait for the others to come to him before he took action. The blue sea wandering dragon bow appeared in his hand, and in an instant, he drew the bow to a full moon and shot 5 arrows in a row, spiritual energy gushing out. The black-robed man was shocked. No, his spiritual energy can't be so abundant. The black-robed man used arrows, and at this moment, these 5 sharp arrows were all coming at him. Each arrow was stronger than the previous one, especially the 5th arrow. The intensity of the spiritual energy was almost comparable to the sum of all the spiritual energy in his body. The black-robed man hurriedly stopped chasing. Anyone who played with bows knew that in the end, there was almost no direct attack. It was all locking skills. If he continued to chase, it meant that he would have to take these 5 arrows in a row. He was not stupid. Of course, he wouldn't choose to take them head-on. But the eyes of the two people from the Sun family lit up. This was a good opportunity. The black-robed man helped them share the attack so that the two of them could rush over. One of the people from the Sun family chopped at him with 2 axes in his hands. However, just 100 meters away, when he had already raised his axes to chop, Han Fei pulled the bow again. This time, Han Fei's right hand was covered with blood by the spiritual energy in the blink of an eye, and his skin was torn inch by inch. At that moment, the axe-bearing man was horrified. What kind of bow skill is this? Why do I feel that my soul is trembling? Swish, an arrow was shot, but there were 2 arrow shadows, one tangible and the other invisible. Not good, Sun Cheng, retreat, but the distance was so close and there was no shelter in the sea. How could he retreat? And the arrow shot by Han Fei had already turned into a stream of light, and the spiritual energy value was 6,400 points, which completely exceeded Han Fei's own limit. Therefore, after this arrow was shot, his right hand was almost crippled. Battle Soul Gong, the 6th arrow of the law skill, Han Fei used it for the first time. Seeing the man from the Sun family block it with 2 axes, Han Fei smiled imperceptibly. Bam! A small hole was shot in the chest of the axe-bearing man, but the spiritual energy arrow directly penetrated the gap between the 2 axes and fell directly on his body. But even so, it was not enough to kill him directly. What really killed him was the soul arrow. Han Fei didn't even look at him. He stretched out his hand and cast the divine healing technique on himself again. On the other side, Black Robe had just dealt with Han Fei's 5 consecutive arrows when he saw this horrifying scene. He killed one person with 1 arrow, and a junior dangling fisher killed a peak-level dangling fisher. Damn, is this world crazy? The black-robed man immediately wanted to retreat. How could he kill him? The Sun family of the Thousand-Star City had mobilized so much force to hunt him down. How could he kill a man who could kill him with 1 arrow and a freakish young man? Not to mention that his spiritual energy had been completely exhausted several times. Even if he still had spiritual energy, Han Fei was still standing there and glancing at him. Those black and white pupils, that coquettish and weird aura, had already made him afraid. Black Robe had not been ordered to capture Han Fei, so he wouldn't risk his life. However, he didn't want to retreat. If Han Fei didn't die today, would he come back in the future? He was very doubtful. This kind of thing was not uncommon. Almost everyone grew up in this kind of environment. Starting from the level 1 fishery, this kind of battle was common. There were too many precedents. However, when Han Fei raised his bow again, this time it was aimed at the black-robed man. This guy immediately stuffed a spiritual fruit into his mouth and fled without saying a word. Whether Han Fei could shoot this arrow again or not, the black-robed man had no spiritual energy now and had to replenish it, right? In addition, the reaction of the Sun family member was different. 2 of his companions were killed. At this moment, his eyes were bloodshot and he smashed at Han Fei furiously with a long rod in his hand. Seeing that the black-robed man was about to be hit by the Sun family member, Han Fei put away the blue sea wandering dragon bow. Bam! Crack! An invisible barrier appeared, blocking the opponent's full blow. Array? Break! At the moment when the array was smashed, a mottled black rod appeared in Han Fei's hand. The 9-star chain instantly blocked the man's way, the golden and red wings repeatedly chopped at the man's arms, and the blue sea wandering dragon daggers circled and attacked. The Sun family member was stunned. He tried his best to resist. Of course, the Sun family member was definitely not weak. His spiritual beast was a turtle, one contractual spiritual beast was the anti-heaven blade, and the other contractual spiritual beast was a common crayfish. At this moment, all of them had fused with his body. However, because his spiritual beasts and contractual spiritual beasts were much weaker than Han Fei's, they were caught in a fierce battle. Realizing that he couldn't retreat, he rushed directly at Han Fei. At this moment, the strength of a peak-level dangling fisher was highlighted. In a head-on confrontation, Han Fei was directly shocked by the billowing air waves to the point of bleeding from his eyes, ears, nose, and mouth. Han Fei's face was expressionless, waving the mysterious rod in his hand with difficulty. Clang! The huge wave directly sent Han Fei flying hundreds of meters away, and Han Fei vomited a mouthful of blood on the seabed. At the same time, the state of attachment was broken, and the state of fusion was almost on the verge of dissipation. Han Fei almost used the last bit of his strength to put this rod into Forge the Universe. This rod was really too heavy. Originally, he wanted to raise the rod and hit it. In the end, the huge recoil caused him to be even more injured. The person from the Sun family on the opposite side was even more miserable. At this moment, he was blown away, and his heart was full of horror. What kind of power was that? Under the rod, his arms were fractured, and his whole body was thrown nearly 100 meters away. This person's mouth was bleeding, and his hands were broken. Looking at Han Fei, who was smashed into the mud pit on the seabed, his expression changed. Should I chase him or not? He didn't know how much combat power Han Fei had left. What if his spiritual weapon exploded again? This person looked around, but the black-robed man had already slipped away. In the end, he chose to retreat. He didn't dare to gamble with his life. After all, Han Fei was too powerful. Now that he had found Han Fei, he only needed to find a way to inform others to come and hunt him down. Why did he have to risk his life? With this thought, his thoughts became clear, and his figure gradually disappeared into the pitch-black sea. But what this person didn't know was that not long after Han Fei was smashed into the mud pit, the state of fusion was automatically cancelled. With the last trace of his consciousness, Han Fei entered Forge the Universe. In Forge the Universe, Han Fei lay down in the spiritual spring and then passed out. Chapter 328. Han Fei had a dream. He dreamed that he was being hunted and had nowhere to run. His body was broken and his head was shot through by an arrow. Who? Han Fei suddenly opened his eyes, sweating. It turned out that he was just dreaming. Only then did he let out a long breath. Han Fei tried to move, but his whole body seemed to be torn apart. The severe pain hit Han Fei's cranial nerves strongly. His right hand, in particular, felt like it was being pressed down by a mountain. He couldn't even lift it. Hiss! He gritted his teeth and cast the divine healing technique on himself. The radiance sprinkled down, and a warm current flowed through his body. Only then did he relax a little. In this way, Han Fei cast the divine healing technique on himself every once in a while. Just like that, it took an entire day for his body to recover by more than half. Obviously feeling much better, Han Fei dragged his tired body and slowly climbed out of the spiritual spring. At this time, Han Fei looked at the spiritual spring again, only to find that the water level had dropped a lot. He couldn't help but smile bitterly. Going for wool and coming home shorn. 5 or 6 of his spirit artifacts had exploded, and his long saber had also been broken. His strength had also been severely damaged, and he had less than 60% of his peak strength. This trip to the dragon boat could be said to be a huge loss. However, Han Fei didn't feel too regretful. When he saw Lin Miao Miao lying quietly not far away, a burst of guilt surged in his heart. Oh, so it's San. The level 3 fishery was really dangerous. The dragon boat belonged to someone else, and it wasn't under his control at all. For the sake of profit, the threat from mankind itself is no less than that from the ocean. 7 days later. Han Fei was in a daze. Cultivating 10 spirit-absorbing war bodies. At this moment, his face was flushed red, and his solid muscles were glowing. Who? Han Fei looked at the data. Owner Han Fei, level greater than 33, Junior Dangling Fisher, Spiritual Energy, 42025614, 4199, Spiritual Heritage, LV, High Grade, Spiritual Beast, Twin Yin Yang Spirit Swallowing Fish, Level 25, Weapon, Blue Sea Wandering Dragon Daggers Majoring in Gong P. Water Vein Technique, Volume 3 of Void Fishing, Spirit Level, Divine Quality, the upper limit of spiritual energy can't be increased anymore. It's time to go out. In the past few days, Han Fei had eaten all the spiritual fruits and only absorbed 4.2 million points of spiritual energy. Together with the spiritual spring that was almost dried up, the total amount of spiritual energy was probably no more than 6 million. Han Fei heaved a sigh. If nothing had happened on the dragon boat, his spiritual energy storage would have reached tens of millions. However, Han Fei didn't feel it was a pity. The dragon boat made him realize that if you were just an ordinary person, you would enjoy absolute safety on the dragon boat. But if you reveal your extremely valuable side, then there is danger. If he had chosen to compromise on the dragon boat, the current situation might have been even worse. If he compromised, this training would be over. Want to leave again? It would be as difficult as ascending to the heavens. With a thought, he appeared in the mud pit at the bottom of the sea again. At this moment, the bottom of the sea had already calmed down. Han Fei was buried several meters deep in the mud. A moment later, a faintly discernible figure quietly poked at the soil and carefully looked around. When he saw a black moon sickle fish suddenly retreating in fear and a school of fish swam by, he was relieved to find that there seemed to be no threat. After all, he had been in Forge the Universe for a long time. The other party wouldn't stay here all the time, and the dragon boat wouldn't stay here for him. Han Fei had been worried that if the people of the Sun family foolishly stayed in this area after he disappeared, he would really be in danger. However, from the looks of it, the other party seemed to think that he had escaped. What Han Fei didn't know was that when they collided, the recoil force of the mysterious rod shocked the other party. That Sun family member was scared away by him. After this life and death experience, Han Fei became even more careful. The effect of the hidden fog grass he used was too poor. Compared to real stealth, this was of little value and couldn't escape the eyes of peak-level dangling fishers at all. However, how many peak-level dangling fishers could there be? In the level 3 fishery, junior dangling fishers still accounted for the majority. Therefore, Han Fei continued to use the mist shadow grass. After all, he was not a hunter. It was not bad to have an ordinary semi-stealth ability. Han Fei summoned the nine-tailed mantis shrimp and one person and one shrimp moved forward on the bottom of the sea. Destination, the seaborne grassland. On the dragon boat, people went up and down every day. So in the following period of time, Han Fei met a lot of people. But every time someone appeared, he would ask the nine-tailed mantis shrimp to dig a hole and then drill into the mud. He was so careful not for anything else but to avoid these people's eyes and ears. If there was no accident, the person of the Sun family should not be dead. As long as the other party was not dead, it was possible to call more people over. Therefore, along the way, every treasure hunter had to be on guard. Even if these treasure hunters had nothing to do with the Sun family, what if the Sun family caught these treasure hunters and asked them? Wouldn't he be exposed? Perhaps, he might even fall into a situation where he was surrounded and killed. Of course, how vast the level 3 fishery was. Along the way, although Han Fei occasionally met people, most of the time there were only fish. Therefore, Han Fei hurried on his way and looked for spiritual fruits as usual. In just 10 days, except for breathing, Han Fei was sneaking on the bottom of the sea. In the past few days, he got a lot of spiritual fruits and encountered danger. Don't look at San. The level 3 fishery was very large, but in a place like the ocean, every 1,000 kilometers, there might be great changes. He encountered deep sea ravines with cliffs, passed through areas of spiritual plants with seaweed everywhere, passed by seemingly mysterious undersea caves, and found wonderful places with thousands of kilometers of coral. Along the way, a large number of creatures appeared, so many that Han Fei didn't even bother to remember them. Han Fei even encountered marching sea leeches once. At that time, he directly rushed out of the water and floated in the air. On the 22nd day, Han Fei estimated that he was less than 20,000 kilometers away from the seaborne grassland. Because from the area where he was at this moment, there were more and more spiritual plants in the sea. This was a very important reference index. At this time, Han Fei was standing on the edge of an undersea cliff. This place looked very beautiful. Behind Han Fei was a dark green carnivorous vine pole hundreds of meters high, which was actually a bit similar to the seaweed vines in the deep-sea jungle of the Level 2 fishery. Around the carnivorous vine pole, there were arched rock caves, large areas of transparent sea squirts, and seaweed swaying with the waves. Han Fei also saw colorful sea urchins scattered in the seaweed. However, these were not the key points. Han Fei had explored many places along the way, but unfortunately, many places that looked like dangerous places were not really dangerous places. Referring to Old Bai's sea map, he speculated his location according to the landform and found that there were as many as a dozen dangerous places near him. However, no matter how hard he searched, he couldn't find any. At this moment, although this cliff crack was not recorded on the sea map, Han Fei still decided to give it a try. Before doing this, Han Fei had to do one more thing. He fished out Lin Miao Miao's body from the world of monster refinement and asked Nine Tails to dig a pit. After a while, Han Fei buried Lin Miao Miao and said, "The scenery here is good. Let's rest here. In the future, if I have a chance, I will go to your hometown to have a look. Goodbye." After saying that, Han Fei jumped up and began to let his body fall into the dark crack. 100 meters. 500 meters. 00 meters. This time, Han Fei fell a full 00 meters before he reached the bottom. Han Fei couldn't help but feel a little shocked. Including the 700 or 800 meters above the cliff from the sea, it must be 1,500 meters deep, right? Han Fei knew that a depth of 1,500 meters was probably nothing in this world. After all, in the words of Old Bai, in the unknown place, any dangerous place was millions of miles long. It seemed logical that the planet was so big and the water was so deep. However, Han Fei was a little uncomfortable. After all, there was strong water pressure on the seabed. 1,000 meters deep and 1,500 meters deep were two different concepts. At least, Han Fei's current speed and reaction ability were suppressed by more than 10%. Before Han Fei could think more, he tilted his head and saw a light spot approaching not far away. There was more than one light spot, and it seemed to be a group of light spots. In addition to those light spots, Han Fei also saw glowing shrimps breaking out of the soil on the surface of the soil. It seems that I'm really in the deep water. Han Fei naturally understood that in the dark bottom of the sea, there would always be some strange creatures. Their bodies could generate electricity and even light up. Obviously, he had encountered one. After a while, he saw the group of big guys swimming over. Name a lanternfish. Introduction: a deep-sea fish with a solid body and flashing tentacles on its head. When it attacks, it will release the lights on its head and tail. It's good at electric shock and spiritual attacks. The flashing lights on its head can be used as bait. Level 37 Quality Rare contains spiritual energy greater than 1,724 points. Edible effect: long-term consumption can enhance spiritual power. Collectible: a flashing light. Han Fei couldn't help but be surprised. What a weirdo. There really is an lanternfish in this shape. What's wrong with having a head? With a horn, you can poke people. You grew a fucking lamp out to illuminate yourself. What an ingenious idea. Sizzle! Before Han Fei could retreat, a large amount of electric light, like a small lightning bolt, fell on him in an instant. Han Fei was speechless. Fuck, I'm still far from you. Shoo! Shoo! Ah ya, ha! Who shouted? Han Fei was shocked. It wasn't him who shouted, ah. Chapter 329. A strange feeling came to Han Fei's heart. I was fucking electrocuted, but I didn't even scream. Who was it? However, following that, the sound of la 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 ah came from the sea again, as if someone was singing. Han Fei was a little stunned. Who would come to the bottom of the sea to sing? Swoosh swoosh swoosh, the blue sea wandering dragon daggers darted out. The nine-tailed mantis shrimp attacked on its own, but it was also electrocuted. At this moment, the nine-star chain swept into the school of lanternfish, catching one with its tail and crushing another to death. When the group of lanternfish saw that the other side could still fight back, they immediately scattered and seemed to increase the electric current. Sizzle, however, they didn't know that Han Fei had been electrocuted countless times. At this moment, Han Fei was stretching his body and letting the electric current flow in his body. Although Han Fei was also twitching slightly, he was not scared. The electric current of the anglerfish was much stronger than that of the piercing electricity jellyfish, but its quantity was much smaller. Compared to dragon eels, their electric currents were not as strong. Therefore, this level of electric current was actually good for Han Fei. Nine tails, come back. Han Fei recalled the nine-tailed mantis shrimp and did not attack but let these lanternfish discharge at him. He took this opportunity to relax a little. He practiced the indestructible body art to see if he could break through the upper limit of 4,199 points of spiritual energy. Of course, Han Fei didn't devote himself to it. Lien. He held a knife in his hand and was on guard at all times. The singing voice had disappeared, and it made him feel very strange. This was also the reason why he didn't rashly head over. Instead of running down to search for it, only God knew what he would find. Following that, he would have to fight again. It would be better for him to enjoy the electric shock therapy. It might even improve his physique. An hour later. The lanternfish were all stunned. What have we electrocuted? Why is there no end to it? He's still alive. Some lanternfish ran out of electricity, and even their breath was a little weaker. They wagged their tails and wanted to leave. However, Han Fei waved his fishing rod and hooked the weak lanternfish back. The lanternfish that was hooked was shocked and hurriedly exerted all the electricity in its body, sizzling at Han Fei. As a result, after their electricity ran out, Han Fei cut off the flashing lights on their heads. When the hundreds of lanternfish in this area finished discharging their electricity, Han Fei could catch one with a swing of his rod. How refreshing! It felt the same when other people petted cats and I petted fish. However, most of the lanternfish still ran away, and Han Fei only collected less than 50 flashing lights. La 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 ah, suddenly, the voice appeared again. Han Fei quickly looked around and spread out his spiritual perception, but found nothing. Han Fei immediately cast out the hook and circled around, but still found nothing. Squeak! Han Fei's face darkened. The voice sounded like a fisherwoman humming in the river. The voice was very clear, and could even be considered very pure. However, no matter how pure the sound was, it didn't make sense for it to appear in the deep sea. Han Fei immediately activated a spiritual energy protective cover and swam forward tentatively. Along the way, Han Fei ignored the shrimps that tried to attack him. Under this strait, there were very few spiritual plants, and he had only seen lanternfish so far. After swimming for dozens of kilometers, Han Fei was suddenly taken aback. He saw a tadpole? Yes, Han Fei didn't think he was wrong. It was a fucking tadpole, but it was as big as a calf. Its body was chubby and it had a long tail. At this moment, this tadpole was floating in the water, its body swaying slightly. A string of data appeared in Han Fei's eyes. Name: wonton fish. Introduction: the stomach occupies the IU of the body. It has the natural ability to devour. It's an omnivorous creature with hard skin that can't be pierced by non-spiritual weapons. Level 37. Quality: rare. Contains spiritual energy greater than 161 points. Edible effect: inedible collectible. A fish skin. Han Fei was taken aback. What does it mean? I've only heard of wonton noodles. Why is there a wonton fish? And the IU of the body? What did he mean by, all of them are stomach? While Han Fei was observing, the body of the wonton fish suddenly swelled up like a bubble being blown up. And as its body grew larger, the huge mouth that spanned half of its body opened. Han Fei was speechless. Its fucking mouth is even bigger than Little Black's. However, this was not the end. This guy's mouth was like a sail, suddenly turning over and over. The huge mouth was like 2 layers of fish skin. As soon as it opened, it doubled in size. Fuck, Han Fei felt a strong suction force around his body. The big mouth, which was a bit similar to that of a plate ray, shocked him. Immediately, the blue sea wandering dragon daggers swept out. However, the blue sea wandering dragon daggers that shot out were sucked away by this suction force and spun directly in the sea. Then, they were swallowed into the belly of this wonton fish. Han Fei's expression changed slightly, and he hurriedly tried to pull the daggers out. However, he suddenly found that the blue sea wandering dragon daggers that were sucked into the belly of the wonton fish faintly lost contact with them. Immediately afterward, Han Fei found that his body flew uncontrollably towards the wonton fish. This caused him to be horrified. What kind of ghost fish is this? What's so great about having a big stomach? Han Fei let his body be sucked over, holding the 2 blue sea wandering dragon daggers in his hands, which shone brightly at this moment. Rip, just when Han Fei was about to be sucked into the mouth of this wonton fish, a cold light dazzled, and the big pocket-like wonton fish was directly torn into 2 pieces by him. Han Fei's body was covered with a layer of filth. Watching his daggers fall out of the belly of the wonton fish, Han Fei frowned, but found that he was a little out of control. Most of my remaining spiritual energy has been swallowed. How did it do that? Han Fei kicked the wonton fish lying on the bottom of the water like fish skin, and with a thought, he stored this guy in to forge the universe. This fish skin was really tough. If he kept it as a fish skin painting, it might not last for 100 years. Han Fei looked around and didn't find the wonton fish again. He breathed a sigh of relief. This thing was like a tadpole if it didn't open its mouth. However, it was really not pleasing to see a monster when it opened its mouth. Han Fei would rather have hundreds of lantern fish, so that he could play with them and help his cultivation. In this way, Han Fei continued to move forward and encountered a few octopuses. However, the octopuses were very smart and directly shrank into the stone crevices. About 10 minutes later, Han Fei heard the sound of pull, pull, pull again. This time, the sound seemed to be clearer. Han Fei immediately looked around. It was dark all around, and there were not many creatures. Clatter, I don't believe I can't find you. Stop pretending to be mysterious. Han Fei sped up and encountered another wonton fish on the way. He directly attacked and killed the other party. About half an hour later, Han Fei suddenly found that there was no way out. The strange song would occasionally appear, but there was no way out of this submarine canyon. No, the sound has an echo. That thing must still be here. Han Fei looked back, but this time his speed was much slower. He directly used his spiritual perception to explore all the rock walls and rocks he passed by along the way. After a full hour, Han Fei suddenly stopped at a rock wall. This rock wall was very ordinary, with some sparse seaweed on it. However, on this rock wall, there were dozens or even hundreds of small holes. If it was just a simple small hole, Han Fei wouldn't pay much attention to it. However, the size of the small holes here seemed to be similar. Han Fei patted the rock wall. It was a real rock, not a virtual environment. Then, Han Fei put his ear to the rock wall again. Clatter, Han Fei's body suddenly jumped back and his body trembled. Just as he put his ear on it, he heard a song coming from inside. Oh! Is it the sound made by a stone? Han Fei's face was gloomy. But how could a stone make sounds? 9 tails, dig! I'd like to see what the hell it is. Thud! Thud thud, as the 9 tails hammered twice, the sound inside stopped abruptly. Sure enough, since it can control the sound, it can't be a stone. 9 tails, dig. After a while, a small hole half the height of a human was dug out by the 9 tails. Because of the loud sound, it also attracted a group of lantern fish. So, Han Fei played with the fish while waiting for the 9 tails to dig the hole. About an hour later, a passage was dug out in this thick rock wall. At this time, Han Fei also finished playing with the fish. He swam into the cave in 2 or 3 steps. As a result, it didn't take long for Han Fei to be shocked. Shit, Han Fei was dumbfounded. Never in his wildest dreams would he have imagined that there would be another world within this cave. The 9-tailed mantis shrimp didn't just dig out a hole, but a whole grotto heaven. Chapter 330. The scene in front of him was more like a paradise in a large area of ruins. Inside the belly of the mountain, there was actually a hidden paradise. Here, there were large tracts of trees emitting blue light. On the trunks and branches, there were thin tubes, which were clearly visible like the meridians of the human body. In those thin tubes, there seemed to be a moving light source, flashing dazzlingly like a racing lantern. Is this fucking blood? Han Fei couldn't help but wonder. On the ground, there were flowers that looked like spiral stairs. Or rather, these couldn't be called flowers. Their petals were emitting blue and white light. Before Han Fei could stop it, the curious 9-tailed mantis shrimp rushed directly into the flowers. The glowing flowers quickly shrank their petals and turned into conical flower buds. Around the flowers, there were also clusters of seaweed. However, they did not look like seaweed. Instead, they looked like long tendrils that covered the ground, as if they were laying a layer of green carpet on the ground. In the seawater, there were also colorful shrimps shuttling back and forth. They seemed to be alarmed and shuttled through this jungle like fireflies flying in the night. Han Fei's heart contracted slightly. It's so beautiful. Han Fei pondered for a long time but couldn't find a word to describe this weird and beautiful place. La, 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 the soft singing sounded again, immediately bringing Han Fei back to himself. Han Fei's face changed slightly. Wait, how could there be such a weird jungle in the belly of the mountain? Han Fei probed out with his spiritual perception and found that except for beautiful plants and some small shrimps, crabs, and snails, there were no other creatures here. The more this was so, the weirder Han Fei felt. He would rather believe that this was a dangerous secret realm with ferocious unknown creatures. In that case, it would be much more harmonious than the peaceful scene in front of him, wouldn't it? Han Fei glanced around. The cave was not high, about less than 50 meters high. The trees covered with meridians just raised their tentacles to the top and then began to grow horizontally. As a result, this place was like a paradise that was completely covered by plants. Swish, 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 30 blue sea wandering dragon daggers appeared around Han Fei. Han Fei didn't believe that this place could be so harmonious. Often, unknown horrors were hidden under such beauty. Han Fei walked into the depths of the jungle step by step. The cheerful singing gradually turned into humming, and the voice was ethereal. Attach. With the 9-tailed mantis shrimp attached to him, there were 9 more chains behind him. At this moment, Han Fei's chains were flying in the air, surrounded by blades, and he was not afraid at all. Along the way, those strange flowers of different sizes seemed to have sensed him, and they all shrank into a ball. Some shrank into flower buds, some shrank into balls, and some directly burrowed into the ground. If only Luo Xiaobai were here at this time. Maybe she could communicate with these plants and learn about this place. However, he couldn't. He could only force his way through. After walking for about 2 kilometers, Han Fei suddenly broke out in cold sweat. Why had he walked for so long without knowing it? Han Fei's heart tightened. Singing. When he heard the singing, he seemed to be confused and had unknowingly entered deep into the forest. Han Fei looked back, only to find that the way back had been blocked by the plants that had bloomed again, and he couldn't see the entrance of the cave at all. As for himself, he was like an explorer walking alone in the Amazon jungle. He entered with a pleasant surprise, but he suddenly could not find the way back. Stop playing tricks on me. Suddenly, the blue sea wandering dragon daggers began to spin, and the surroundings were cut into a mess in an instant. The flowers were withering, the branches were cut off, and all kinds of small glowing shrimps and crabs fled. Aw! Han Fei didn't stop humming and ran quickly in the jungle. After a while, he seemed to have run to the center of this cave. Yes, Han Fei was sure that this was the center. He saw a red tree, less than 50 meters high, with long branches, and sword-like red leaves the size of a palm on the branches, which were even more gorgeous than the maple leaves in autumn. On one of the branches, a red and white fish was looking at him. Han Fei's pupils constricted. This fish was even more beautiful than Little White. To be precise, Little White was more like a pure little girl, while this fish was like an enchanting, flirtatious, and beautiful woman. What the two had in common was that they both had long tails. On the fins, tail, and dorsal fins, there were long whiskers like ribbons. Han Fei was sure that this was the most beautiful fish he had ever seen. La, 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 the sound was made by this red and white fish. At this moment, the data in Han Fei's eyes showed. Name a Millennium Snapper. Introduction: a fairy in the deep-sea jungle, with a charming appearance and bewitching power. It can make thousands of different kinds of beautiful sounds through the scales on its body and has the ability to control spiritual plants. It can absorb the vitality of ordinary spiritual plants. In areas rich in spiritual plants, it is almost immortal and extremely dangerous. Level A3 Quality Exotic. It contains spiritual energy greater than 234 points. Effect: after eating, it can permanently enhance the body's recovery ability several times. Collectible. A nun. Hiss. Han Fei was shocked by the words, almost immortal, and extremely dangerous, as well as the words, enhance the body's recovery ability several times. What kind of monster is this? A fairy from the sea. Giggle. The Millennium Snapper's voice changed, and there seemed to be a burst of laughter coming from its body, which made Han Fei's hair stand on end. Chi! Chi! Suddenly, Han Fei found that his feet were entangled. The seaweeds that had been hiding in fear were now madly entangling his feet. The trees with transparent meridians stretched out their branches. The originally beautiful branches suddenly scattered into countless filaments. The most terrifying thing was that the fiery red tree where the Millennium Snapper lived suddenly shook, and red leaves fell from the sky. But Han Fei didn't feel beautiful at all, because the falling red leaves turned into palm-sized swords, burning with flames, and shot straight at Han Fei. Fuck, little gold, attach. Blade storm. Han Fei panicked. Who wouldn't be afraid of this? How could he not be shocked by the 360-degree tentacles and the thousands of small red swords coming like locusts? As little gold attached, Han Fei began to spin, and the seaweeds under his feet were broken. The blue sea wandering dragon daggers, the sharp blade-like wings, and the 9 chains spun together. Han Fei was a human-shaped storm of knives and swords. Puff! Puff! Clank, 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 crack, crack, crack. For a time, all kinds of breaking sounds filled Han Fei's ears. Han Fei seemed to have become a meat grinder, mincing countless spiritual plants into pieces. The small red swords were constantly shattering, and a large number of spiritual plant fragments floated around Han Fei, forming a spiritual plant storm. But in Han Fei's perception, the Millennium Snapper was still looking at him and singing fearlessly. La, la, la. Suddenly, Han Fei's expression changed drastically. No, it's poisonous. Han Fei's expression changed drastically. The seawater was filled with a large number of spiritual plant fragments, and these spiritual plants emitted a strange mist, which slowed down Han Fei's spinning speed. A nerve-paralyzing poison. Han Fei immediately broke through the air with the chains and went straight to the Millennium Snapper. He didn't know if he could resist these poisons. Although he had eaten a lot of anti-poison spiritual fruits, and he even ate one 2 days ago, what could he do? In the face of unknown poisons, Han Fei felt a kind of fear in his heart. Han Fei's body was gradually paralyzed. Han Fei and the fish were competing with each other for time. The chains passed through the sea of spiritual plants, trying to catch the Millennium Snapper. However, thousands of tentacle silk threads appeared in front of this guy. After paying a certain price, he managed to pull all the 9 chains. As a result, Han Fei couldn't spin anymore. Those spiritual plants swarmed up and seemed to want to devour Han Fei. The blue sea wandering dragon daggers were still spinning under Han Fei's control. However, there were too many spiritual plant tentacles, and some spiritual plants always entangled Han Fei. Bam! Han Fei's body surface erupted with spiritual energy, and after shattering a field of spiritual plants, the blue sea wandering dragon bow appeared in his hand. Swish, 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 5 arrows were shot consecutively. Wherever the arrows passed, all the spiritual plants were turned into powder. The Millennium Snapper seemed to be frightened and began to dodge in a panic. Spiritual energy arrows flew in front of the red tree one after another. Each time, a large number of spiritual plants could be taken away. Han Fei didn't panic. Since you can also run, let's play. So, Han Fei shot the arrows again and again, throwing out 11,000 points of spiritual energy. In the blink of an eye, this beautiful jungle turned into a battlefield. Bam! Under the pincer attack of the arrows, the Millennium Snapper was shaken several times. This directly caused it to stop singing and turn around to run. Run? You're just like a human. You can't beat me, so you want to run? Did I allow you to run? Chapter 331. The Ocean Grotto Heaven Jungle, which was as beautiful as a fairyland, was bombarded by Han Fei with his longbow. He didn't shoot too strong an attack. After recalculating, each arrow contained about 0 points of spiritual energy. This was completely within Han Fei's tolerance. Han Fei had a high upper limit of spiritual energy, a strong physique, and a massive reserve of spiritual energy. However, for this Millennium Snapper, the total amount of spiritual energy it could store was no more than 2,500 points. It seemed to be weak in both defense and speed. Bam! 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 The spiritual plants exploded one after another, and a large number of sword leaves on the red leaf tree were torn apart. However, to Han Fei's surprise, the branches of the tree were not damaged at all. In the chaos, Han Fei couldn't help but pay more attention to the tree and read its data. Name: a big red trunk. Introduction: an exotic red trunk native to the marine forest. Due to unknown reasons, it is malnourished, so its strength is less than half of the original species. It's good at flying rain swords, and its red leaves will release huge heat. Level A3 quality: mutated. It contains spiritual energy greater than 666 points. Effect: inedible collectible. Big red trunk wood. Han Fei was surprised. Big red trunk? He suddenly remembered that this was the main keel wood of the fishing boat on the list of materials given to him by the old man. However, Han Fei immediately thought, but this big red trunk is a mutant species, and a low-level one. Is it really suitable to be the main keel? No, it can't be used as the main keel, but it can be used as a side keel. Han Fei was slightly delighted. He hadn't gone to the seaborne prairie yet, but he had already gotten one of the core materials of the fishing boat. Squeak! Suddenly, Han Fei was brought back to himself by the singing. The Millennium Snapper flapped its fins, and bursts of strange sound waves fanned towards Han Fei. Humph! Break! Another arrow. Battle Soul Gong. The 4th arrow burst out. The waves were shattered in an instant, and the Millennium Snapper was knocked away by the huge impact. The huge force directly broke a large tree. At the moment when the Millennium Snapper was blown away, the attacks of the surrounding spiritual plants also came to an abrupt halt. La, Pa! Han Fei rushed to the Millennium Snapper, only to see that it was still trying to run and sing. But how could Han Fei let it get what it wanted? Holding the water-dividing seal in his hand, he slapped it and it rolled dozens of times on the ground. This time, the Millennium Snapper had no strength to make a sound. Han Fei saw that this guy was almost flipped over and his intestines were almost exposed. Like a demon, Han Fei stood before the Millennium Snapper and said, "Surrender or die." Demon Purification Pot, collect. Seeing that it was useless, Han Fei slapped the Millennium Snapper away again. Return. Still not willing. Do you want to die? Bang, return, if you want to die, I'll fulfill your wish. Bang, so many times in a row, the beautiful Millennium Snapper was turned into an ironhead fish. Its fins were broken, its tail was crushed, its fish intestines had fallen out, and its mouth was crooked from the beating. Its fins were broken, its tail was crushed, and its mouth was crooked. Holding a blue sea wandering dragon dagger to the fish's belly, Han Fei said viciously, "I don't care if you can understand me or not. I'll give you one last chance. Collect." Han Fei never thought that he would threaten a fish one day. When he encountered the dragon eel, it also struggled, but it didn't have the strength to struggle in the end. This Millennium Snapper, on the other hand, was not strong enough and could only control spiritual plants. At this moment, it couldn't even make a sound, but it was still struggling. Fortunately, the Millennium Snapper compromised. However, after the Millennium Snapper compromised and its body was collected into the Demon Purification Pot, a phantom condensed outside. Han Fei was dumbfounded when he saw it. "Shoot! Who are you?" Han Fei was stunned. He even thought that he was hallucinating. He saw a human phantom. The shadow was a bit fuzzy, but he could tell that it was a beautiful woman. "Thank you." In Han Fei's mind, a weird voice transmission appeared. Han Fei was shocked. "Who are you?" The phantom didn't answer Han Fei's question but said, "Don't eat the fruit, huh?" "Eat what fruit?" "Hey, who are you?" The voice was a bit intermittent. "Don't eat the fruit. Otherwise what? Speak. Speak clearly. Hey, do you hear me? Is the signal bad?" However, the phantom became dimmer and dimmer. "Don't eat fish." Han Fei was so anxious that he almost cried. "Wait. Sister, you told me not to eat the fruit and fish. What do you mean? And who are you?" But the phantom became fainter and fainter in front of Han Fei. In the end, there was no voice transmission in his mind. The forest in the grotto heaven became silent at that moment. Where did this figure come from? What does it have to do with the Millennium Snapper? Unfortunately, no one could answer Han Fei's question at this moment. All this was like a mystery. But Han Fei remembered what the woman said. Don't eat the fruit, don't eat the fish. However, the more Han Fei thought about it, the more he felt something was wrong. What's wrong with eating fish? When I was in the Thug Academy, I ate fish every day. After collecting the Millennium Snapper, Han Fei turned to look at the big tree. Without saying a word, he went up to cut the tree. However, as soon as Han Fei started, he used the falling red leaves. However, a lot of the red leaves of the big red trunk had been consumed. When the red leaves fell, its branches were almost bare. After more than 8 hours, Han Fei finally cut down the big red trunk. He cut off the trunk and threw the branches in to forge the universe together with the bare branches, occupying a large space. Even the roots were dug out by Han Fei. It seemed not bad to put this thing on the bow of the boat as a root carving. It must not be wasted. After doing all this, Han Fei felt that this trip was worth it. Not only did he collect the Millennium Snapper, but he also dug out a keel next to the fishing boat. However, he hadn't finished exploring this cave yet. The Millennium Snapper was gone, but in such a large cave, was there no other treasures? But after walking forward for less than a kilometer, Han Fei was a little frightened. He actually saw several small tombs. The small tombs had no tombstones or inscriptions, just some raised piles of gravel, and there were 7 of them in a row. Han Fei couldn't help but be surprised. Was it done by the woman just now? 7 tombs, of course, meant 7 people, but there should be one who set up the tomb. Han Fei looked around and found a stone platform not far away. There was a stone bench in front of the stone platform. It seemed that someone had lived here. Han Fei couldn't help but be surprised. Who the hell lived in the sea? Didn't they breathe? He walked forward and saw that the table was already covered with mud, but there seemed to be a piece of fish skin under the mud. Han Fei wiped the mud with one hand and his eyelids twitched. It was really fish skin. However, this fish skin was already in tatters. Most of it had been broken, and only a few words were left on it. Half a month ago, the 8 of us joined hands and entered the seaborne grassland. It was said that there were rare spiritual fruits there that could change my meridians. It was already a miracle that I became a dangling fisher with a level 1 spiritual heritage. But it was too difficult. There was no way to improve one's body. I could only explore it by myself. However, if I had a chance to change my spiritual heritage, everything would change. Han Fei couldn't help but feel nervous when he read the first paragraph. A level 1 spiritual heritage and a dangling fisher. What kind of genius could do that? Han Fei couldn't help but have mixed feelings. It seemed that there were really a lot of people in this world who didn't accept their fate. This guy's courage alone was worthy of the word extraordinary. Han Fei continued to read. The man wrote, "The seaborne grassland is indeed dangerous. But the real danger is the jungle under the grassland. One of us died before the battle. There are terrifying octopuses there that seem to be strange poisons. There are black lobsters that have indestructible hard armor. There are horrifying demon shells. Until we met the big red trunk." Han Fei's eyes immediately glittered. Big red trunk? Was the big red trunk here brought from the seaborne grassland? However, on second thought, this place should be about 20,000 kilometers away from the seaborne grassland. Even if he steered the fishing boat at full speed, it would take him a day or two. Why did these people all die here? Chapter 332. Han Fei continued to read the fish skin notes. The fish skin notes continued, "These big red trunks seem to be controlled by some mysterious power. We didn't break in until we ran out of spiritual energy. Then we saw the most amazing view in the world. It was a branch that seemed to extend from the starry sky. The branch alone covered an area of almost 10,000 meters. A full moon seemed to be hanging on the branch, and fairies were singing on the shadow of the full moon. The branch wouldn't attack us. It even offered us its fruits. Up to this point, the fish skin map was already broken. Han Fei could clearly see the holes on the fish skin that were pierced by swords and the corners that were burnt by fire. In the following notes, Han Fei saw some familiar words. I mustn't eat those fruits. Those spirit fruits are too delicious. They can easily improve my spirit meridians. I feel like my body is being purified. There's a strange power fusing with me. When I turned around, they wanted to kill me. Han Fei didn't understand the rest. Obviously, the person who wrote the fish skin notes was badly beaten. The fish skin was dyed red by blood. Then, the fish skin was gone. Han Fei became slightly vigilant. In any case, he remembered it. The notes were very clear. Under the sea grassland, in a jungle of big red trunk, there seemed to be an unusual spiritual tree. The fruits on the tree seemed to be very tempting to human beings and were inedible. Han Fei put away the fish skin notes and searched for other clues, but he found nothing. That's not right. How can these spiritual plants grow so luxuriantly without enough spiritual energy? However, this cave was not large. It was only less than 5 kilometers in radius. Han Fei swam around the cave several times, only to find some entrances that were the size of a palm or just small holes, as if the cave had been born out of thin air. In the end, Han Fei could only think that it was a miracle of nature. The coral reefs that stretched for thousands of kilometers seemed to contain all the colors of the world. They could not be explored or known, but they were there. Finding no treasures, Han Fei didn't stay any longer. Except for the Millennium Snapper and the mutant Big Red Trunk, there were no other treasures here. It was indeed not a treasure trove, but a marine wonder. Han Fei didn't think too much about it. There were too many ocean wonders. Any place he swam to could be called an ocean wonder, including the undersea cliffs and the coral reefs. 5 days later, Han Fei finally arrived at the Seaborn Prairie AI according to the map. EI. When he found that there were more and more plants in the sea, he was greatly relieved. He extended the hook to the surface of the sea and observed for a while, before he secretly floated to the surface. If his guess was right, after such a long time, there should be someone chasing after him on the surface of the sea. 2 days ago, he met a peak-level dangling fisher at the bottom of the sea who charged at him without saying a word. Faced with a peak-level dangling fisher, Han Fei certainly wouldn't be intimidated, but when he showed the 9-tailed mantis shrimp, the man turned around and ran away. Because of this, Han Fei had been chased for 3 days. Thanks to Little Gold's extremely fast speed, he was able to avoid those guys. At this moment, Han Fei didn't directly enter the seaborne grassland. Although the seaborne grassland was to explore the bottom of the sea, it was not famous for the bottom of the sea, but for the surface of the sea. He thought that it would be a shame if he hadn't even seen the seaborne grassland before. He didn't think that the Sun family would find him. After all, the seaborne grassland was so big that it could be found anywhere. On the surface of the sea. The spiritual plants might not have been so dense at the bottom of the sea, but when Han Fei broke out of the water, more and more seaweed covered the place. The fishing boat took off. Han Fei took a deep breath of air greedily and then looked at the sea around him that really looked like a grassland. The surface of the sea was a combination of green seaweed and seaweed. This layer was not thin, but half a meter thick. It meant that people could walk here. Of course, walking was also dangerous. It was like walking in a swamp. You never knew where your next step would land. The seaweed was covered with barnacles, and above the seaweed, there were crisscrossing ponds that looked like reeds in the sea. They could be seen everywhere. Han Fei finally understood why this place was dangerous. If human beings walked on the seaweed, they would be surrounded by reeds. What did that mean? It meant that apart from looking up at the sky, the other 5 directions were all unknown areas, and they couldn't see anything. You didn't know if a sea serpent would suddenly appear under your feet, or if a knife would suddenly fly at you from all directions. Han Fei got it. Perhaps there was another reason why the seaborne grassland was so scary, and that was because the range of spiritual perception of dangling fishers was not large. At this moment, Han Fei looked around and found that the reeds on the sea stretched for more than 100 kilometers, which was his speculation based on the dense reeds here. There were only 2 ways to enter the grassland. One was from the surface of the sea, and the other was from the bottom of the sea. There was no doubt that some special creatures were hiding in the reeds. Of course, it might be less dangerous than the bottom of the sea, but Han Fei had never been there, so he didn't know. He stayed in the sky for a moment, and occasionally, someone flew or rose in a fishing boat dozens of kilometers away. Shoot! Are you serious? Is there really such a coincidence? Han Fei was about to run, when the other party's fishing boat turned around and flew away. Who? I was almost scared to death. Damn it, I just robbed a token. What the hell is this sea token? Why did the people from the 1,000-star city go through so much trouble to catch me in the level 3 fishery? Did they come to catch me in the level 3 fishery? Since it wasn't the Sun family, Han Fei was reassured. Perhaps this was the style of the level 3 fishery. Even if you met someone on the sea, most people wouldn't want to communicate with them unless they were on ghost boats, because you didn't know whether the other party was a friend or a foe. Of course, if you thought you were very strong, it would be a different story. Han Fei still chose to land. He thought that no matter how dangerous the seaborne grassland was, it was just an AI. It shouldn't be too dangerous. Besides, he saw other people nearby, which meant that they had come to the seaborne grassland. There were quite a lot of people exploring. After all, he could only see dozens of kilometers, but the seaborne prairie was at least 5 or 6,000 kilometers wide. So, there must be a lot of people here. When he was about 50 meters away from the surface of the sea, Han Fei began to perceive. He found a turtle hiding in the seaweed and some regular fish and shrimp that posed no threat. Only then did he put away the boat with peace of mind and landed on the reeds. When Han Fei landed on the seaweed, his feet sank into the seaweed after only 2 steps without him noticing. Hey! It's rather hard to walk. Then, Han Fei intentionally controlled his movement technique and cleared the way with the blue sea wandering dragon daggers. Everywhere he passed, the reeds were cut apart. Even though his range of perception was greater, who knew if the reed marshes themselves were dangerous or not? After walking hundreds of meters, Han Fei suddenly looked down, only to find that a few green grass starfish had crawled to his legs and were trying to stab into Han Fei's flesh with their tentacles. After a slight vibration of spiritual energy, the green grass starfish were shattered. Apart from the starfish, a few snake-like spiked knife loaches suddenly bit Han Fei from the seaweed. In fact, their speed was not slow, but they were just ordinary creatures after all and couldn't do anything to Han Fei. Before they bit Han Fei, they had been cut into several pieces by the blue sea wandering dragon daggers. Should I go into the sea? There doesn't seem to be any treasures on the sea. He walked for another 5 kilometers. Han Fei frowned. It was obviously unrealistic to travel around the seaborne grassland on foot. The reeds were even denser than the seaweed at the bottom of the sea. Han Fei was about to give up before he even went inside. When Han Fei was about to take out his fishing boat, he sensed danger and subconsciously dodged to one side. For a moment, Han Fei glanced sideways, only to see a long, thin tongue that looked like noodles flashing by. Hew, Han Fei was shocked. How was it possible? He had been perceiving his surroundings. How could a creature have ambushed him from behind? The blue sea wandering dragon daggers had already been slashed, but they missed their target. A gigantic creature bounced and rolled its long, thin tongue at Han Fei again. Han Fei wasn't scared with the daggers in his hands, but he shivered and retreated the moment the information appeared in his eyes. Name: Green Arrow Venomous Frog. Introduction. This is an aggressive frog that lives in the seaborne grassland. It can easily kill junior dangling fishers with poison. It's good at camouflage and lives in seaweed most of the time. Level greater than 35, quality rare, spiritual energy greater than 1,620 points. Effect: inedible, collectible. A green arrow venom. Han Fei swallowed. Was it a frog that could easily kill junior dangling fishers with poison? Han Fei was slightly shocked. He probably couldn't resist the poison. The anti-poison spiritual fruits that he had could only make him invincible among the great fishing masters for a while. However, when the poison was beyond the level of a great fishing master, regular poisonous fruits couldn't deal with it. But when the poison was beyond the level of a great fishing master, it couldn't be solved by ordinary poisonous fruits. Immediately, Han Fei waved his hand and raised water shields on all sides. Seeing that the green arrow poisonous frog quickly disappeared into the reeds, Han Fei waved his hand, and 30 blue sea wandering dragon daggers darted out at the same time, blocking the green arrow poisonous frog's retreat. Pucci, the green arrow venomous frog that had just crawled into the algae, was hacked to death. Its belly was cut open, and there were 3 knives in its head. Han Fei cleared the reeds within 30 meters with the blue sea wandering dragon daggers and then dragged the green arrow poisonous frog out carefully. When he saw the patterns on the back of the green arrow poisonous frog that were identical to the patterns on the seaweed, his face turned grim. It wasn't that he didn't sense it, but that he was deceived by this fellow. What a powerful disguise technique, and it's only a rare creature. Could this be a poison sac? Chapter 333. When Han Fei plucked a blue sea wandering dragon dagger from the back of the green arrow venomous frog, he found that the edge of the dagger was green and knew that he had cut the venom sac. Oddly enough, the back of the green arrow venomous frog had different colors, so it was impossible to tell it from the seaweed. The dark parts were where the venom was stored too. Han Fei had an idea when he saw the venom. Wouldn't it be better to use poison when he was faced with an invincible opponent? It would save him a lot of trouble. Immediately, Han Fei took out a few bottles and carefully stored the venom of the green arrow venomous frog. After a while, Han Fei collected a bottle of venom that contained no more than 50 grams. Then, he got on a boat and sailed to the seaborne prairie. He flew to a place where the seaweed was sparse and dove into it. A moment later, Han Fei appeared at the bottom of the ocean again. He looked at the jungle that looked like a dark forest and couldn't help but feel scared. When the 5 of them went to the deep-sea jungle in the level 2 fishery, they had been saved by Wenren Yu multiple times. This time, there was no team, and Han Fei was on his own. So, Han Fei made a plan for himself. He could go in, but he had to set a limit of 1,000 kilometers. Beyond the limit, he would have to see if the creatures inside were dangerous enough for him. At the bottom of the ocean. Without saying a word, Han Fei swam in steadily. He saw that the seaweed and the seaweed that grew around the seaweed were floating in the water. Han Fei felt that his blood was freezing at the first glance. He saw that many of the seaweed had been hollowed out, and the leaves were broken and full of spirit-swallowing bugs. The bugs were not scary, but there were too many of them. Han Fei stayed away from the seaweed that was full of spirit-swallowing bugs. Although they were only level 3, nobody would have a chance to regret their decision if they were swallowed by the bugs. Fortunately, this was the seaweed on the seaborne prairie. The seaweed was not so dense here. Han Fei carefully avoided the spirit-swallowing bugs. After moving forward for about 20 kilometers, the seaweed became denser, and Han Fei saw a lot of sargassum. The sargassum in the sea looked like long snakes floating in the sea. If not for the fact that they were hanging from the roots, Han Fei would have attacked them already. However, the moment he entered the sargassum forest, he was shocked to find that the sargassum algae were shivering. To Han Fei's astonishment, a creature that looked like a line extended out of the sargassum. Name: the Beauty's Beard. Introduction: this is a bloodthirsty worm that parasitizes sargassum. Its body length can reach nearly 100 meters. The bloodthirsty worm is extremely tenacious and not easy to cut. It kills its enemies by entangling them and sucking their blood. It can be used to weave fishing nets. Level 33, Quality, Rare, Spiritual Energy greater than 516 points, Effect, Inedible, Collectible, Vine Vein, Absorbable. Han Fei was slightly stunned. Could these insects weave fishing nets? This was the first time it had heard of a material that could be used to weave fishing nets. The concept of fishing nets was not uncommon, but it was a pity that there was no suitable material for fishing nets in the level 1 fishery or the level 2 fishery. Even if it was the blood spider silk, because it was too thin, was not suitable for weaving a web. They met in the level 3 fishery. However, Han Fei was not in the mood to think about how to weave a fishing net, because he was surrounded by the Beauty's Beard. Not to mention whether or not he could weave a net, the key was how to survive. Han Fei controlled the blue sea wandering dragon daggers to cut the Beauty's Beard, but when the daggers fell on the Beauty's Beard, he saw that the Beauty's Beard knew how to reduce the force and actively avoided the attack. Han Fei cut off a Beauty's Beard with 2 slashes, but when he turned around, he found that hundreds of Beauty's Beard were almost surrounding him. Nine-tailed mantis shrimp, come out and dig a hole. Having no choice, Han Fei had no choice but to dig into the ground. He roughly calculated that with his cutting speed, he would soon be entangled by the Beauty's Beard and be killed by it. However, to Han Fei's surprise, when he and the nine-tailed mantis shrimp crawled dozens of meters underground, plant roots attacked him. Huh? Could it be that these plants have all become spirits? Han Fei tried cutting them with his daggers, only to find that they were not like the Beauty's Beard that he could cut easily, so he asked the nine-tailed mantis shrimp to continue digging. Of course, Han Fei knew that there were many dangers under the soil, but compared with the Beauty's Beard and the spirit-swallowing bugs above, he still felt safer down there. After Han Fei and the nine-tailed mantis shrimp crushed countless roots and killed dozens of mess-swallowing bugs and several sea serpents, Han Fei estimated that they had dug for about 50 kilometers. Suddenly, he felt a great vibration above him, so he asked the nine-tailed mantis shrimp to dig out. However, before he got out of the ground, he saw 3 people hiding in the mud. Han Fei? The 3 of them? At that moment, the soil suddenly exploded. The 3 of them attacked Han Fei almost at the same time. Great! I didn't expect to run into a fellow traveler. Unfortunately, you are alone. You deserve to die. When all 4 of them rushed out of the mud, they stood on 2 sides and stared at each other. The 3 people in front of him, one with a hook, one with an axe, and one with a knife, were all junior dangling fishers. At this moment, they were all in the fusion state, and it seemed that they were going to kill him. Han Fei was lost for words. Hey! Let's talk. Who are you? Who are you? Hee, stop pretending. You know the answer. Kill. The man with the knife charged at Han Fei with waves of knives, and the other 2 surrounded him from the left and the right. Han Fei said telepathically, "Are you really not going to talk? You can talk to the sea god. Kill him." Bam, Hugh, a terrifying power suddenly burst out, and the water-dividing seal flew across the sky, directly smashing the guy who used the saber. The 9-star chains burst out so suddenly that the man with the hook had no time to react before he was tied up by the chains. The axe-wielding fellow was the most miserable. He only saw a golden-red shadow flash before his eyes, and then he felt as if he had been hit by a small mountain. He was sent flying more than 100 meters away and smashed into the sargassum algae. No. Help me! Han Fei saw that the man was tied up by the sargassum that had been extended out in the blink of an eye. Countless tentacles tried to crawl into his body, but because the beauty's beard couldn't break his defense, they could only crawl in through his eyes, ears, mouth, and nose. Han Fei shuddered at the scene. Was this what it felt like to be caught by the beauty's beard? Isn't this a little too bloody? The other 2 were not much better at the moment. The man with the knife was slapped into the mud by Han Fei. However, he had chosen to abandon his teammates and run away. What a joke! He had clearly seen that golden red light figure. It was actually a contractual spiritual beast, the kind with wings. But how could Han Fei give him the chance to escape? After being struck by the water-dividing seal, he was already severely injured. There was no way he could escape. The blue sea wandering dragon bow appeared, and 1,600 points of spiritual energy condensed into an arrow. Like a sudden clap of thunder in the ocean, it blew up the mud and pierced through the escaping man. He didn't understand why this person was so strong even though he was only a junior dangling fisher. There weren't any flashy and long-lasting battles. Han Fei couldn't defeat peak-level dangling fishers, but he was confident that he could fight 5 people at the same level. The last person was tied up by the 9-tailed mantis shrimp. Seeing Han Fei slowly walking towards him, he was horrified. "Don't kill me, I won't say anything." Han Fei smiled. "Really? Someone once told me that nobody in the level 3 fishery can be trusted. You can't trust anyone in the level 3 fishery. If you want to live, trade secrets for them." The man panicked. "I have secrets, I have." Han Fei's eyes glittered. "Oh. Tell me about it. You only have one chance. Seize it." The man looked at Han Fei as if he were a devil. "Will you really let me go?" Han Fei said impatiently, "One more word of nonsense, and I'll send you to the sea god." The man shivered and hurriedly replied, "I know there's a treasure trove about 3,000 kilometers deep in the seaborne prairie." Han Fei stared at the man without blinking. 3,000 kilometers? He had encountered so many dangers when he was only 100 kilometers away. Did this guy have the ability to go 3,000 kilometers deep? Han Fei said, "I told you that I only give you one chance. You're telling me that you can go 3,000 kilometers deep with your strength?" Do you think I'm an idiot? The man quickly shook his head. No, no, we have a map. Han Fei was refreshed. Give it to me. Chapter 334. What Han Fei received was not a newly drawn map but a tattered fish skin. There were mottled traces of corrosion on the fish skin, indicating its age. Han Fei asked curiously, "Where did you get this map?" The man stammered, I got it from someone else." Han Fei nodded and couldn't help but ask, "Just now, you attacked me the moment you saw me. You were very skilled and coordinated. I don't think it's the first time you've done this. So, you guys run ghost ships?" "Yes." This person didn't retort. The people who ran the ghost boats were ruthless, and killing and fighting were common occurrences. If Han Fei hadn't killed 2 people in a blink of an eye, they wouldn't have been so passive. Han Fei wondered, "Then why are you ambushing me here? Did you know someone was coming?" The man nodded. Actually, the level 3 fishery, the Seaborn Prairie, was a place where ghost ships were gathered. Because it was hidden, it was hard to find them. Even if someone wants to kill us, this place is filled with vines and algae. If they aren't careful and fail to kill us, they might even die. Han Fei raised an eyebrow. So, there are a lot of ghost boats here? A lot. To what extent? That person thought for a moment and said, "Every 100 li, there will always be a fleet of ships. But most of them are in the seaborne steppe. If we go deeper, we will also die." It seemed that this place was much livelier than he had imagined. According to the man, as long as he wanted to, he would be surrounded and killed every 100 kilometers around the Seaborn Prairie. This was a matter of course. After all, Han Fei was alone. In the eyes of others, a junior dangling fisher was naturally an excellent prey. Han Fei asked, "What's the deepest you can go?" That person replied, 300 kilometers. "We lost 2 people that time." Han Fei was a little surprised. He had lost 2 junior dangling fishers in only 300 kilometers. The death rate was a bit high. With a thought, the 9-tailed mantis shrimp took back the 9-star chain, and Little Gold landed beside Han Fei. The man's eyelids twitched. He had never seen a winged spiritual beast before. The young man in front of him was definitely an ordinary person. His 2 powerful spiritual beasts and his unknown contractual spiritual beast all told him that the young man in front of him was a monster. While the man was frightened and thinking that he was probably going to be killed, Han Fei suddenly said to him via voice transmission, "I said I won't kill you, so I won't kill you. You can go now." The man was stunned for a moment before his face lit up with joy. He quickly burrowed into the soil and began to escape. But when he drilled into the soil, he didn't see Han Fei shaking his head. Han Fei shook his hand with spiritual energy and shattered the treasure map. It was just a fake map. It was too deliberate. Otherwise, he would really be interested in exploring it. Han Fei sneered. "If you run to other places in the undersea jungle, you may have a chance to survive, but why did you run out?" These days, even Han Fei was treading on thin ice, because he knew that the AI in the Seaborn Prairie there must be a lot of people searching in EIC area, so he had been at the bottom of the sea, not even coming out of the water to breathe. If there was no accident, this man was likely to be interrogated. If he hadn't seen Little Gold, he might be able to get away with it, but once he had seen Little Gold, he would probably be killed. But Han Fei didn't care. He burrowed into the mud and took out the sea-swallowing seashell of the man he shot dead. There were not many things in the sea-swallowing seashell: a fishing boat, a spiritual fruit, less than 20,000 mid-quality pearls, and 2 low-quality spiritual knives. In terms of value, it was not enough. But Han Fei didn't mind. His previous losses were not small, and it was good to get something to make up for it. But Han Fei didn't leave immediately. He carved and fiddled in the soil for a long time, and soon a spirit gathering array and several auxiliary arrays were completed under his feet. The moment the spirit gathering array was formed, a lot of spiritual energy began to gather from all directions. Han Fei nodded in satisfaction. The speed of gathering spiritual energy in this spirit-gathering array was already comparable to the intensity of a dangling fisher's cultivation here. As he expected, after only a few seconds, the horsetail grasses not far away began to stick out their tongues and swarm at him. Han Fei could also see that there was movement in the soil not far away. Crab claws, snake heads, weird conches, and a lot of spirit-swallowing bugs dropped from the algae leaves and floated to him. Han Fei also put a bottle here, in which he dripped the venom of the green arrow venomous frog. Han Fei sneered. "Hey! Sun family, here's a gift for you first." Outside of the sea-born prairie, Zhang Ming was running crazily. He didn't dare to stay for a second after he was out of the sea-born prairie. This place was full of ghost boats. If he was too slow, he might be killed and robbed if he was discovered. He didn't take a breath until he was hundreds of kilometers away from the sea-born prairie. He swore that he wouldn't get off as long as he found a dragon boat. However, when he was full of expectations, 3 fishing boats suddenly emerged above the clouds. A moment later, Zhang Ming almost cried. "Peak-level dangling fishers. You're running ghost boats too?" At this moment, Zhang Ming was kneeling on the deck. Before him, someone asked coldly, "Have you ever seen a young man?" This was the second wave of ghost pirates that Han Fei had encountered, but this time, there were more of them. There were 5 of them. Due to the terrain, 3 of them escaped after a fierce battle. At this moment, Han Fei was putting away the 2 sea-swallowing seashells and setting up arrays again. Different from before, Han Fei set up 2 arrays this time, a stealth array and a spiritual explosion array. Even if they couldn't kill a peak-level dangling fisher, they could at least seriously injure him. At this point, Han Fei had given up on accumulating spiritual energy to deduce techniques or make a breakthrough. The sea-born prairie was full of dangers. He should reserve more spiritual energy for emergencies. After 300 kilometers, Han Fei found that a battle had taken place here. The algae had been broken, and the bodies of the spirit-swallowing bugs were everywhere. 300 kilometers. Han Fei couldn't help but frown. He saw a mahogany. Was this the dangerous place that the few people mentioned? According to the notes he got from the Millennium Snapper, the big red trunk appeared in the depths of the sea-born prairie. However, he didn't see the big red trunk, but he did see a sea mahogany. The sea mahogany was also an excellent material for fishing boats, but now that he was only 300 kilometers deep into the sea-born prairie, the sea mahogany here was obviously not very useful. One only needed to look at the traces of logging to know this. He roughly understood that many people liked to wander around the seagrass grassland. Perhaps their greater purpose was to cut down the sea redwood. It was the easiest thing for most explorers to do in the level 3 fishery. Without stopping, Han Fei continued exploring. After 500 kilometers, Han Fei saw a big black fish that was devouring the spirit-swallowing bugs on the algae. Name a scavenger. Introduction: It's an ocean scavenger. It likes algae, moss, fish fry, body debris. There's almost nothing it can't eat. Its defense is very strong, and its body is as hard as a crystal when it fights enemies. Its fins can be refined into magic weapons. Level 36 Quality Rare Spiritual Energy greater than 126 points. Effect: It causes spiritual energy to surge. And collectible fins. Han Fei was stunned. This was the first fish he had ever seen that had a negative effect after eating it, wasn't it? At this moment, the scavenger had already discovered Han Fei. Its fins immediately spread out. Its head, fins, dorsal fins, tail. Like bones connected together, it looked like a hedgehog in the blink of an eye. Han Fei swam forward and was about to observe it, but it simply lay in the water and stopped swimming, allowing Han Fei to approach it. Clang, clang, Han Fei knocked it with a blue sea wandering dragon dagger, which made a crisp sound. Interesting. I won't kill you if you can take my full attack. Han Fei put away the dagger, gathered spiritual energy at the tip of the dagger, and slashed out a knife light. Puchi, ha! It's not broken at all. Han Fei's eyes widened. He found that this scavenger was completely different from the scavenger he knew. It was made of skin and bones. More importantly, its skin was half a foot thick. Han Fei didn't even know whether it was skin or flesh. Han Fei was speechless and a little shocked. This was the first fish that could resist a full-strength attack from him. Its defense power was not just strong, but ridiculously strong. Huh? Will the indestructible body end up like this? Han Fei shuddered. If his physique became like this in the future, he might as well die. Suddenly, Han Fei's eyes turned cold. He felt a slight tremor under his feet, and he immediately stopped enjoying the scenery. I didn't expect it to come so soon. Chapter 335. Zhang Ming was dead. His eyes were bulging before he died. He had barely broken through the mud when he was entangled by countless beauty's whiskers. Then, he was cut into halves by an enormous crab's pincer. The few people who came with Zhang Ming felt their scalps go numb when they saw this scene. This place had been covered by the beauty's whiskers, and there were countless hidden dangers in the mud. The moment he broke through the mud, a couple of sea snakes bit him, and the beauty's whiskers were as numerous as reeds on the surface of the ocean. The few peak-level dangling fishers attacked at the same time. The beauty's whiskers were minced into pieces, and the snails, sea snakes, and crabs were all killed. Humph. It's definitely that boy. Someone said telepathically, that boy is a genius. He set up a spirit-gathering array here and attracted a lot of creatures. It seemed that he had intentionally let this fellow go. He knows that we're hunting him. Someone replied, he's indeed a big shot, or so many of us wouldn't have come to catch him. However, he underestimated peak-level dangling fishers. Did he think that the beauty's whiskers and regular sea creatures could kill us? One of them sneered when he saw the bottle in the middle of the spirit-gathering array. He even set up a pivot here. Humph. This little thief can't be far away. After saying that, the man grabbed the small bottle with one hand. In his opinion, the pivot of such a decoy usually contained good stuff. Wait a moment. Just as someone at the side reminded him, the small bottle, along with the entire spirit-gathering formation, exploded. For a moment, the place was filled with dust and turbid. A huge pit was left on the ground, and 7 people fled as fast as lightning. At this moment, they were all covered in dust and looked rather disheveled. Idiot, do you really think that the boy is an idiot? How can something that he intentionally left here be safe? The others all looked awful too. They were utterly humiliated that a bunch of peak-level dangling fishers had been tricked by a little boy. The guy holding the bottle looked awful. He was about to respond, when his face changed drastically. His hands and face were quickly turning green, and green poisonous blood was flowing out of his eyes, nose, mouth, and mouth. Not good. It's the green arrow frog venom. The other 6 changed their expressions and all backed off. Antidote, the poisoned man was terrified. In just a few dozen breaths, his skin had turned pale green. The green blood kept seeping out of his body. Who brought the antidote to the green arrow poisonous frog? Among the 6, one of them asked with an ugly expression. However, the others all shook their heads. The green arrow venomous frogs mostly lived on the surface of the ocean. No one had expected that they would need the antidote for the green arrow venomous frogs underwater. One of them said, Sun Kun, use your spiritual chi to protect your heart. Let's see if you can hold on before we come back. After saying that, the 6 of them looked at each other and swam towards the surface at the same time. The antidote to the green arrow venomous frog was not hard to find. If Han Fei searched carefully in the reeds, he would occasionally find a common detoxifying fruit among the reeds. Although these fruits were ordinary, they could detoxify the poison of the green arrow venomous frog. Of course, only peak-level dangling fishers could resist this poison. If it were a regular junior dangling fisher, if he didn't take the antidote in the first few seconds after being poisoned, he wouldn't have a chance to take it again and would have been poisoned to death. After the time it takes for half an incense stick to burn, they returned one after another. However, their expressions were extremely unsightly. Sun Kun was already dead, and his entire body was green to the point of turning black. Damn it! Their expressions were extremely unsightly. Just now, at that moment, Sun Kun bore the brunt of it. Although Bao Ha couldn't do anything to him, but it could make the spiritual energy in his body fluctuate. Together with the poison of the green arrow frog, a peak-level dangling fisher was killed just like that. Chase. Since that kid lured us here on purpose, he can't have gone far. I'd like to see how big a storm a junior dangling fisher can make. Beat yourself up at the moment when the explosion sounded. Han Fei set up a spirit gathering array and a spirit explosion array on the spot, not to kill anyone. He knew in his heart that at the level of a peak-level dangling fisher, not to mention a single shot, even if it's 10 bows he might not even die from the explosion. However, he needed the spirit gathering array and the spirit explosion array under his feet to lead the way for them to prove that he had been here before. After setting up the array, Han Fei immediately went into the sea red wood. From now on, he was going to play an exciting game with his pursuers. Han Fei didn't know what was ahead, but he was very mobile. Although he had the beauty's beard and the spirit-swallowing bugs, none of them could really threaten his life. Han Fei didn't wander in the forest leisurely anymore but sped up. The sea redwood was full of dangers. Han Fei saw a long bug sticking to the sea redwood. When he passed by, it opened its mouth and bit at him. Of course, Han Fei was also vigilant. He smashed it with a seal, smashing both the insects and the tree. Sea spiders floated down from the leaves. Wherever Han Fei passed, spider threads were shuttling back and forth. Many times, Han Fei was entangled by the spider threads and had to cut them with the blue sea wandering dragon daggers. Fortunately, his speed was very fast. Many dangers did not have time to erupt, and he was able to avoid them. Even so, every few dozen kilometers, Han Fei would throw a mass of spiritual energy behind him. The seawater shook again. Han Fei smiled. The second spirit explosion array had been broken. In this way, the third spirit explosion array wasn't far away. Let the game begin. Hundreds of kilometers behind Han Fei. The 6 of them looked awful. They were blown up again. Asshole, does this kid think he can kill us with a small array? I really don't know what he's thinking. Don't be angry. This kid is trying to lure us deeper. 1,000 kilometers is a boundary. Let's go there first and see if he has the guts to break into the 1,000-kilometer range. Someone gestured, be careful. This kid is a spirit gatherer and has been practicing arrays. He must have left a lot of arrays along the way. If he carves arrays in the sea redwood, we'll be in big trouble. It doesn't matter. It's not so easy to carve arrays in the sea redwood. Although the creatures there are not strong, there are many of them. He can't fight while carving arrays, can he? However, no one expected that Han Fei was carving arrays at this moment. At this moment, the 9-tailed mantis shrimp, Little Gold, and Little Black were crazily killing the red spirit spiders on the sea redwood. This was a rare creature whose silk was very tough and could be used as a fishing line. But at this moment, none of the spider's silk could approach Han Fei. The 9-tailed mantis shrimp, on the other hand, had almost been wrapped into a cocoon. It couldn't turn invisible, nor did it have Little Gold's extremely sharp wings. The 9-star chain was not a sharp blade, so the 9-tailed mantis shrimp was very uncomfortable at this moment. Han Fei said, soon. Don't worry. Let's let them taste the spider cocoon. Half an hour later. Han Fei stood outside a purple bamboo forest. Although it was a bamboo forest, it was actually very weird, different from the bamboo forest in the deep-sea jungle in the level 2 fishery. The bamboo forest in front of him seemed to be a barrier, an inner barrier of the seaborne prairie. Han Fei searched carefully on the purple bamboo and found a lot of stick worms, which were almost integrated with the purple bamboo. Underground, Han Fei found several long worms that looked like earthworms. They were smooth and legless, but he felt that they were as dangerous as the mess-swallowing worms. But even so, Han Fei didn't go in rashly, because neither the stick worms nor the strange earthworms were strong. It seemed a bit strange. At this time, another earthquake came. Han Fei couldn't help but be surprised. These people came so fast. Had they already chased into the sea redwood? Immediately, Han Fei plunged into the purple bamboo forest without thinking about anything else. Are you risking your life? I can still crawl into the demon purification pot. What about you? I'm not Han Fei if I don't find the most dangerous place to trap you. Just when Han Fei rushed into the 1,000-kilometer boundary, the 6 pursuers of the Sun family were all stunned. They thought it was another spirit blasting array. But it turned out that they had rushed into a water dungeon array. Damn it, let's break the array. Swish, 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 the 6 of them were really dispirited now. They encountered a large wave of creatures every dozens of kilometers. God knew how they gathered together. But here, the water dungeon array only needed to trap them for a moment, and they would be wrapped into a cocoon. More importantly, it didn't matter whether they could be wrapped into a cocoon or not. What mattered was that the little tricks that Han Fei left behind consumed too much of their spiritual energy. Chapter 336. Where there was a forest, there would be insects, whether the forest was on the water or underwater. Stick insects, a large insect, belonged to a kind of creature with a very strong camouflage ability in the insect world. Sometimes, if you stared at a branch for a long time, you would think it was a branch, but in fact, it was a stick insect. When Han Fei rushed into the bamboo forest, he immediately regretted it. Because he found that the stick insects he found in his perception were only a small part of them. At this moment, he still maintained a fast-forward posture. However, at this moment, a purple bamboo moved. At that time, Han Fei didn't feel good. I'm fucking looking for insects on the bamboo. Who knew that the bamboo itself was an insect? And there was more than one such stick insect. Han Fei stopped and found that at least 5 of the 10 bamboos around him were stick insects. Fuck! Han Fei immediately used his semi-stealth ability, and at the same time, holding 2 knives in his hands, he quickly attacked the insect limbs that swept over. Chilla, clank, clank, they were harder than he thought. Even these insect limbs could be used to refine magic weapons. After a while, Han Fei's face changed slightly. Unlike other insects, this kind of stick insect had sharp hooks at the top of its limbs. When they camouflaged, the hooks were hidden in the bamboo joints and would only be revealed when they attacked. What shocked Han Fei was that these thin hooks were extremely penetrative and could even pierce into his skin. Fortunately, these stick insects were not exotic creatures. Otherwise, with so many insects, if each of them stabbed him with a hook, his body would probably be pierced into pieces. Clank, 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 in the sound of knocking, Han Fei swam all the way, ignoring the minor injuries. Because he also found that if he was slow, the big earthworms underground would rush out like sandworms, and their sharp fangs were very scary. When Han Fei was avoiding the stick insect, he was accidentally bitten. As a result, hundreds of tentacles instantly stretched out from the body of the big insect, trying to entangle him, and Han Fei was so scared that he immediately launched a spiritual energy explosion. However, what made Han Fei even more speechless was that the big earthworm, which had been blown to only half, still bit him and seemed to want to attack further. I'll kill you. 30 blue sea wandering dragon daggers cut crazily and finally cut the big earthworm into pieces. But after being delayed for a while, the stick insect's tentacles were everywhere, and another big insect emerged from the ground. Xiao Jin, attach, the wind is tight. Han Fei cast the divine healing technique on himself and hurried to escape. He knew that a mere water prison array would not be able to trap those people. He had to find a more dangerous place before these people broke the formation. In the sea mangrove forest. A disciple of the Sun family gathered half of his spiritual energy and smashed the water dungeon array. With another slash, dozens of red spirit spiders were chopped into pieces. The leader shouted, "Sun Chi, you retreat first. I don't care what method you use, pass the message to young Master Sun Mu." Sun Chi was the guy who split open the water prison formation. If they wanted to break the formation as quickly as possible, they would have to make sacrifices. Not only did Sun Chi use half of his spiritual chi for this strike, but it was also a strike that combined his essence, chi, and spirit. After this strike, it would be difficult for him to return to his peak in a short time, and his strength would decline. Sun Chi nodded and responded, "Wait for me." Sun Chi turned around and left. The other 5 didn't look too good, and the leader said to everyone via voice transmission, "Don't give that kid a chance to weaken our strength again. If we encounter a spirit gathering array again, just bypass it." While the people of the Sun family were breaking the formation, Han Fei finally passed through the bamboo forest, but his body was full of small spots like a hornet's nest. The place that Han Fei came to was relatively spacious, full of seaweed and reefs. Above him was a large number of tangled rotten algae, and below his feet were countless shells. Most of them were broken shells of various colors. Not far away, Han Fei saw a big mussel swallowing and spitting. Among the reefs, a few black moon sickle fish were swimming quickly. Han Fei secretly breathed a sigh of relief. This place seemed to be much safer than the bamboo forest. As long as he didn't swim into the rotten algae, it shouldn't be too dangerous. But when Han Fei was about to move forward, he suddenly stopped. He saw a large eyeball staring at him from a few hundred meters away. When he took a closer look, he found that it was an enormous, dark green snake head. Shoot, a string of data popped up in his eyes. Name: snake-tentacled shark-faced octopus. Introduction: This is a mutated creature that is the combination of multiple eggs due to unknown factors. It has terrifying speed and high aggressiveness. It can swallow creatures 10 times its size. It's highly venomous. Level 39. Quality: Exotic is spiritual energy greater than 456 points. Effect: Inedible, collectible, a none. Shoot, Han Fei was stunned. He thought it was just a snake, but it turned out to be an octopus. Next to the snake head, 7 more heads popped up, which was appalling. Han Fei had goosebumps all over his body. He could accept a 3-headed snake, and he could accept an 8-headed snake, too. But then, a shark head popped out right after. How did such a freak come to be? Seeing that 8 snake heads and a shark head were staring at him, Han Fei took a step back. He had barged into the monster's nest. Han Fei had already sensed that there seemed to be a spiritual fruit behind the snake-tentacled shark-faced octopus. It shouldn't grow on a tree, but the kind of spiritual fruit that grew in clusters. A spiritual fruit that could be guarded by such an exotic creature must be extraordinary. If it were any other time, Han Fei might have to fight this monster for 300 rounds, and maybe he could even kill it. However, things were different now. There were still pursuers behind him. He had to slip away from this monster's face. Otherwise, if no one attracted its attention, wouldn't this guy target him? Han Fei didn't want to enter Forge the Universe here. As expected, although this monster was strong, it was only as strong as a peak-level dangling fisher. If there was more than one person chasing after him, then this guy would basically die. He didn't think that he was really invincible after growing into a monster. So, if he entered Forge the Universe now, when should he come out? Han Fei's original intention was to keep consuming those people's spiritual energy and not give them time to catch their breath. At that time, he would find a dangerous place, attract a large number of creatures, and exhaust them to death. Even if they didn't die at that time, it would be easier for him to kill them. But now it seemed that this plan was going to fail. Han Fei was in a dilemma. Damn it, let's do it. The water tumbled, and the 9-tailed mantis shrimp and little gold were released at the same time. The moment the two legendary creatures were released, Han Fei saw the snake-tentacled shark-faced octopus shrink its few heads. Han Fei instructed, "Nine-tailed mantis shrimp, don't move. Just stand here and stare at it. Little Gold, too. Don't attack without permission." With that said, the three blue sea wandering dragon daggers floated on the soil in front of Han Fei, and he was drawing arrays. This time, instead of drawing arrays with spiritual energy, Han Fei carved arrays with daggers. In terms of difficulty, this was far higher than drawing arrays with spiritual energy. Besides, this was not a spirit-gathering array, but a concealment array. The concealment array that Han Fei set up before could at most block other people's perception, making it impossible for them to see the surroundings clearly. But now, if Han Fei left, needless to say, the monster would definitely follow him. If he didn't leave, the pursuers would soon catch up. He could only take a gamble on this concealment array that he wasn't very familiar with. 100 seconds later, a complicated array appeared. However, it wasn't enough. Han Fei poured more spiritual energy into the lines of the array. In this way, a concealment array finally appeared. However, the moment the concealment array was filled with spiritual energy, the snake-tentacled shark-faced octopus couldn't help but move. "Shoot, don't panic. This is not a spirit-gathering array. There's no need to be excited." Then, Han Fei quickly set up a spirit explosion array outside of the concealment array. Originally, Han Fei intended to intimidate the snake-tentacled shark-faced octopus with the spirit explosion array, but this guy was even more excited. Han Fei's face immediately changed. "Nine-tailed mantis shrimp, little gold, grow bigger. Grow as big as you can." Receiving Han Fei's message, the two contractual spiritual beasts began to expand in size. A moment later, two sea monsters more than 30 meters long appeared. The snake-tentacled shark-faced octopus was slightly stunned. Although the snakehead kept opening its mouth as if it wanted to challenge Han Fei, it didn't move in the end. Han Fei had to admit that different creatures could sense each other. Even if exotic creatures were of a higher level, they would still be a little fearful when facing legendary creatures. Han Fei secretly breathed a sigh of relief and burrowed into the soil. He wondered if the concealment array could fool those people. To be safe, Han Fei felt that he'd better hide underground. Han Fei made up his mind. If he couldn't hide anymore, he would seize the time. He would hide and forge the universe and come out in a few days before they attacked. After waiting for half an hour, those people still hadn't come. The nine-tailed mantis shrimp's 9 tails were about to reach the snake-tentacled shark-faced octopus's face, and all the snakeheads had opened their mouths. "Hurry up. If they don't come, I'll have to fight this freak first." While Han Fei waited anxiously, the sound of bamboo joints breaking came from behind him. Immediately, Han Fei buried himself in the ground. With a thought, the nine-tailed mantis shrimp and little gold suddenly disappeared. The snake-tentacled shark-faced octopus was stunned. It had finally gathered enough momentum and was ready to fight, but where were the two monsters? Chapter 337. In the bamboo forest, the broken bodies of the stick worms were everywhere. A cold knife light slashed through and dozens of purple bamboos were all shattered. The 5 people of the Sun family finally broke out of the purple bamboo forest. However, as soon as they rushed out, they saw the snake-tentacled shark-faced octopus dozens of meters away. At this moment, the 8 big heads of this monster were about to reach into the concealment array that Han Fei set up. Suddenly, 5 people popped out, which gave it a fright. The 5 people of the Sun family were also startled. They quickly stopped rushing forward. "Who?" the 8 snakeheads suddenly roared. Just after the 2 tough monsters were killed, 5 more appeared. The snake-tentacled shark-faced octopus subconsciously prepared to run. But the people of the Sun family didn't know that the snake-tentacled shark-faced octopus was going to run. Octopuses usually ran with their heads first, and their tentacles would push their bodies forward with the help of the current. Coincidentally, the monster's tentacles were all snakeheads. As soon as it started to run, the snakeheads immediately straightened and charged at the 5 people of the Sun family. Watch out! Disperse and collect it. As the order was given, the 5 people immediately dispersed. One of them pulled away with a bow, raised the bow, and shot. One of them held a long whip in his hand, and the sharp weapon went straight for the tongue. As for the remaining 3 people, one of them opened his armor box and drew out his sword and knife. One of them retreated and injected spiritual energy into the bodies of the other 4 people. The last person immediately summoned a large amount of seaweed and rolled it at the snake-tentacled shark-faced octopus. Seeing this scene, Han Fei secretly took a deep breath. Now he only needed one more hunter, and he would have all 5 classes. But even so, the enemy was still too strong. It would be great if he could kill the enemy's spirit gatherer and manipulator. Otherwise, the monster wouldn't be able to resist them at all. The first thing that came to Han Fei's mind was hidden weapons. But it was too late to enter Forge the Universe to refine needle-type hidden weapons. Who knew when they would finish fighting? He did have needles on him, but they were all magic weapons and couldn't even penetrate their spiritual energy protective covers. No, the spirit gatherer must die. The snake-tentacled shark-faced octopus was completely dumbfounded. I'll stop fighting, okay? I've already started to run. What else do you want me to do? Wasn't this bullying an octopus? When the torrent of knives and swords reached its body, the monstrous octopus was enraged. Its 8 snakeheads roared at the same time. However, before it could finish roaring, a sharp arrow directly pierced into one of its heads, bursting its eyeballs. The head was pierced through, leaving only half of it. The bow-wielding Soul Master said, its defense is extremely strong. Tie it up and kill it together. At this moment, the seaweed vines covered a large area of the water. Seeing that the snake-tentacled shark-faced octopus had nowhere to run, it finally made its move. Roar! The 8 snake heads suddenly swelled, becoming several times larger than before. As soon as it opened its mouth, a dark green fishy wind whizzed over. Hiding in the mud, Han Fei's eyes suddenly lit up. This was a good chance. This manipulator was too awesome. This large patch of seaweed had blocked his vision. Didn't this give him an opportunity? Little Black and Little White came out. Go bite that spirit gatherer. Watching Little Black crawl out of the mud, Han Fei pressed Little White, fearing that his position would be exposed. Thankfully, those people were too busy fighting to notice the noises below the ground. They thought that the snake-tentacled shark-faced octopus's roar was raising the mud. The spirit gatherer's face changed greatly. Not good. This monster is poisonous. Maintain your spiritual energy protective cover. Their expressions changed drastically, and they hurriedly dodged to the side. The enormous tongue was already biting at them. Unfortunately, it only encountered peak-level dangling fissures. Theoretically speaking, they were all on the same level as it. The snake-tentacled shark-faced octopus wouldn't be scared at all if it only encountered one. But it encountered 5 of them at once. It might not even be able to defeat a legendary one, not to mention an exotic one. However, at such a desperate moment, the monster dared not be careless. It suddenly raised its 2 tongues high. In the next moment, a wave of coldness and a wave of scorching air surged out. Crack! The man holding the whip was frozen together with his whip. Kacha! The ice was shattered, and the man hurried to cut the tongue with the whip. But all of a sudden, he felt a pain in his calf, as if he had been bitten by something. Damn it! There are other things around. Watch out! Yes, Han Fei had asked Little Black to change the target. In any case, he had to catch one of them and bite it first. The battle was intense. Those people had been maintaining their spiritual energy protective covers. Of course, whoever's spiritual energy protective cover was broken first would be bitten first. The manipulator said telepathically, "Where did the other things come from? I've sensed them." "Are you mistaken?" The man holding the whip frowned. While fighting back, he looked at his calf and confirmed that he had indeed been bitten. A piece of my flesh was bitten off, and you're telling me that there's nothing else? However, the man didn't think much of it. He thought to himself, maybe I was hit by someone's weapon. However, he did not notice that a small stream of water was enveloping a drop of light green liquid that was fusing into his flesh. Han Fei swallowed and frowned in pleasant surprise. He had to kill one of them first. Even if he didn't die, he wouldn't be a threat anymore as long as he lost more than half of his combat power. At this moment, all the scales on the snake-tentacled shark-faced octopus broke off. In an instant, the seaweed that blotted out the sky and covered the earth had countless holes in it. On the other hand, the 5 people of the Sun family were bombarded too. The armorist suddenly slashed with his saber. With a flash of the saber light, a snake head was chopped off. Hoo! It was chaos. The monstrous octopus was infuriated when the snake head was chopped off. Thousands of scales were flying, and the 5 people's faces slightly changed. One of them said telepathically, "Shield." The armorist immediately threw out his armor box. Several large shields flew across the sky, and for a moment, clanging sounds rang out as they were struck. Hiu! In the meantime, the bow-wielding man shot an arrow and blew up a snake head. The snake-tentacled shark-faced octopus had lost 2.5 heads. Half of its head had been pierced by the bow-wielding man earlier. Han Fei was a little impatient. Freak, give it a try. If you go on like this, all your snake heads will be shot off. With such a big stature, how could he look good but be useless? While Han Fei was complaining, nobody noticed that the snake head that had been chopped off suddenly bounced up and bit through the armorist's spiritual energy protective cover. The huge snake head bit off one of his hands again. Han Fei was instantly refreshed. Is that even possible? But, well done. Immediately, another drop of venom was sent into the armorist's body by the water current. It was exactly at this moment that the whip-wielding man's face changed greatly. Not good. I've been poisoned. The manipulator asked in shock, when were you poisoned? Everybody backed off, only to see that the whip-wielding man's face had turned green. The spirit gatherer suddenly scolded, take the antidote now. This is the venom of the green arrow frog. That boy is nearby. Han Fei was shocked. I've been exposed. Aren't these people too fast to react? It only took them a few seconds from being poisoned to discovering and guessing that he was poisoned. Han Fei's eyes bulged when he saw that the man took out a fruit. There's an antidote. Han Fei couldn't sit still anymore. Want to take the antidote? That was impossible. He would rather be discovered than let the man take the antidote. Hew, hew, hew. After shooting 3 arrows in a row, Han Fei revealed himself. Although he only killed 2 people, if he could get rid of these 2, he should be able to deal with the soul warrior, the spirit gatherer, and the manipulator. Not good. Thief. Get out of the way. Han Fei's 3 arrows were not very powerful. Except for the one that contained 0 points of spiritual energy, the other 2 were shot at the snake head. Everything happened too fast. The spiritual fruit in the man's hand was blown up by the sudden spiritual energy explosion. Han Fei said telepathically, if you want to fight, come on. I'll fight all 5 of you today. However, the spirit gatherer said telepathically, watch out. Disperse. As it turned out, the monstrous octopus had gone mad after being shot in one of its 2 heads. The shark mouth that had never been used suddenly opened. Hoo! The rolling sound waves instantly caused the seawater within a radius of several thousand meters to boil. Han Fei was so shocked that his eyes, nose, mouth bled and his skull almost exploded. Soul attack. Han Fei was shocked. But what was even more shocking was that a snake had appeared in front of Han Fei in the blink of an eye. It was too fast. At this time, Han Fei remembered that the description of this thing mentioned that it was extremely fast. Han Fei launched the water-dividing seal backhand. However, before he could react, he had flown into the purple bamboo forest. There were a few other people flying out with him. In Han Fei's surprised gaze, one of the snake heads was biting the bow-holding man and swinging its head wildly. Then, to Han Fei's shock, the man was bitten into 2 pieces. Shoot! You only attacked now. This octopus is so timid. If you had attacked earlier, I wouldn't have had to come out. Chapter 338. Han Fei didn't expect that someone would be bitten to death, not to mention being bitten into halves. In midair, Han Fei was surprised to see that the whip-holding man had taken out another fruit and was about to put it into his mouth. He immediately shot another arrow. Unfortunately, it was too late. Although the man was bleeding from the mouth, he was a peak-level dangling fisher after all. Besides, the freak octopus didn't seem to be interested in him at all after he was so poisoned. At this moment, it was attacking Han Fei and the others. Attach! In the blink of an eye, Han Fei spread his wings, dodged a huge snake head, and carried a mottled long rod on his shoulder. Seeing that Han Fei was coming at him, the whip-holding man shouted angrily, "Thief, even if I'm poisoned, I'm not someone a scoundrel like you can kill. Then take my rod first." The iron rod fell heavily and collided with the long whip. Crack, 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 several joints of the spiritual whip were broken, and the whip-holding man vomited green blood. But he dodged Han Fei's attack. Sensing the movement behind him, Han Fei didn't even look back and launched 30 blue sea wandering dragon daggers at his back. "I'll kill you while you're weak." Han Fei knew that he couldn't give this man any time to rest. The water-dividing seal pressed down like a hill, and at the same time, a blue sea wandering dragon dagger stabbed at him. The latter was anxious. Everything happened so fast that he had no time to call for help. He widened his eyes and glared at Han Fei. "If you want me to die, let's die together." However, the broken whip suddenly straightened, like a scale-shaped sharp sword, and at the same time, the whip inside Han Fei's body. Rumble, the two of them collided and smashed a piece of purple bamboo. A stick insect was about to attack, but it was crushed. Han Fei vomited blood. The long whip pierced through his abdomen, but the whip-holding man was even more miserable. Han Fei had stabbed a dagger into his neck. Before he died, the man clutched the long whip and pressed it against Han Fei's abdomen. Before he looked back, Han Fei had already smelled a bloody wind. He hurriedly picked up the guy under him and held him in front of him. However, in the next second, Han Fei saw that the man in front of him only had half of his body left. Holy shit! Ignoring the pain, Han Fei pulled out the whip that pierced through his body, cast the divine healing technique on himself, and spread his wings to fly to the armorist. Because everything happened so fast, the armorist did not realize that he was poisoned and was trying his best to resist the snake head. When Han Fei rushed over, the knives and swords around him were like a storm, and he had just crushed a snake head. The armorist frowned when he saw Han Fei swimming towards him. How long had it been? 10 breaths? In such a short period of time, 2 people had died in succession, and it was all because of this little thief. Han Fei grinned. There were still 4 snake heads and 3 members of the Sun family left. He was still too weak to fight. Han Fei suddenly drilled into the ground, and the 9-tailed mantis shrimp was released from its attached state, and it began to dig a hole head down. Trying to run. Before the hole was 10 meters deep, Han Fei saw the opponent's spirit gatherer throw a mass of spiritual energy at him. Holy shit, 9-star chain. Clang, 9 chains flew across the sky, blocking the sneak attack of the snake head. Han Fei retreated quickly, glaring at the spirit gatherer. The huge tongue bit the 9-tailed mantis shrimp and shook its head violently. After a long time, seeing that the tail of the 9-tailed mantis shrimp couldn't be torn off, it was thrown away. Han Fei's face changed drastically. At that moment, Han Fei sensed that the 9-tailed mantis shrimp was seriously injured. Fuck. You're courting death. Han Fei took back the nine-tailed mantis shrimp, and at the same time, he condensed 3 masses of spiritual energy in his hand and threw them at the 3 opponents. Han Fei was furious. Come on, throw them at each other. Let's see if you have more spiritual energy or I have more spiritual energy. Han Fei shot an arrow, and 3,200 points of spiritual energy turned into a sharp arrow, shooting straight at the shark head-like octopus head. Fuck you. Bite my shrimp. I'll shoot you to death. Immediately, a large number of scales tried to block the sharp arrow. However, with a puff, the scales were penetrated. The snake head was fine, but the octopus head was blown up with a big hole. Hoo! A scuffle broke out again. The 3 parties were tired of fighting. Especially the people of the Sun family, their faces all turned green. How much spiritual energy do you have in total? After fighting for so long, how could he casually throw out 3,000 points? Especially the spirit gatherer, he was speechless. He saw a spiritual fruit being thrown in front of him and then exploding. Thief, Han Fei responded, fuck you. Go to hell. The monstrous octopus was short of spiritual energy at the moment. It was very strong, but it couldn't resist so many people. Seeing that 70,000 or 80,000 points of spiritual energy burst out, the 4 heads all darted over. No, Sun Chi, pull me. The manipulator of the Sun family was swimming over quickly, and a large amount of seaweed rolled over crazily, but he was still a step too late. The 4 snake heads bit at him from several directions, and in the blink of an eye, the spirit gatherer was torn to pieces. He was the one who died the most miserably. Puff, Han Fei was feeling complacent when he felt a crisis of death coming. His body had just swum less than a meter when a knife slashed directly at his back. At that moment, Han Fei felt that he was going to die. He was cut from the shoulder to the waist by the enemy's armorist. Ah! Right when Han Fei was cut, Little Black, eager to protect his master, rushed forward and bit crazily. In the blink of an eye, the armorist had been bitten almost 10 times. Little Black, come back. Han Fei was lost for words. That guy is fucking poisoned. Didn't you see him take the antidote? Why did you bite him? Han Fei flew back with the counterforce and threw all the green arrow frog poison into the water to cover the armorist. On the other side, he picked up the half-body of the bow-wielding man that was already cold, took off his sea-swallowing seashell, and searched for it. Thankfully, he had seen that kind of fruit just now, so he soon took out a fruit. Enduring the excruciating pain, Han Fei quickly stuffed it into Little Black's mouth. Don't bite me unless I tell you to. Not far away, the manipulator of the Sun family looked at the scene in shock. In his eyes, Han Fei had stuffed an antidote fruit into a pool of water. Wait, there's something, and it's invisible. Unfortunately, he discovered it too late. The manipulator, who had discovered it, was about to escape from the battlefield. However, at this point, how could Han Fei let him escape? He wouldn't let him go no matter what. The 9 chains darted out again, piercing through layers of seaweed and waving crazily, just to stop him. Han Fei unfolded his wings and threw 2 spiritual fruits at the armorist who was taking the antidote. The armorist was dying. When he discovered that he was poisoned, the poison had already reached his bones. God knew how much green arrow frog poison Han Fei fed him. After all, he was still bleeding after throwing 3 antidote fruits into his mouth. At this moment, seeing that Han Fei threw 2 spiritual fruits at him, he cursed, damn it. In the next second, the armorist was covered by the snake heads. As for Han Fei, he was raising his bow at this moment, and the magnificent spiritual energy was gathered in the arrow. The muscles, bones, and veins of his right arm were broken again. Hew! Han Fei vomited blood twice when he launched the 6th arrow of the War Soul art. However, he grinned. The battle was worth it. The 5 peak-level dangling fishers had all been killed. Looking at the manipulator who tried to protect himself with abundant seaweed, Han Fei sneered. do you think you can block my tracking arrow with seaweed? Rumble, the purple bamboo forest was razed to the ground. With a thought, Han Fei recalled Little Black and Little White and stood still while the monstrous octopus swallowed the spiritual fruits. 3 seconds passed. The 4 heads of the monstrous octopus bit at Han Fei at the same time. However, Han Fei's lips were slightly curled. Bye, brother freak. When the 4 heads appeared where Han Fei was, Han Fei had already disappeared. The monstrous octopus was sweeping crazily in the purple bamboo forest. Han Fei had to thank the snake-tentacled shark-faced octopus. This guy was much more ferocious than he thought. Who could have thought that an exotic creature could kill 3 human experts of the same level? Even with Han Fei's help, the strength of its bite and the extreme speed were all indicative of its formidability. Inside Forge the Universe, Han Fei lay in the spiritual spring and cast the divine healing technique on himself now and then. This time, he might have been lucky enough to have the help of the monstrous octopus. Otherwise, he could have killed one of the 5 peak-level dangling fishers at most, and he might have even been killed himself. Pooh! Han Fei spat out a mouthful of blood. Looking at his mangled right arm, he smiled bitterly. It seems that I have to make a breakthrough. You're tuning in to the Blissful Bookshelf YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.